Okay. I will call the Polk County Board of Supervisors to order.
Can you hear me?
Receipt of evidence and opinion on proper notice.
The County Board of Supervisors July 21st meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in two places, posted on the county website July 10th, 2020, and published in a legal newspaper the week of July 13th, 2020. In addition, on Friday, July 10th, 2020 at 5:24 p.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting and proposed resolutions to supervisors via email or mail. The notice of amended agenda was posted in the Government Center, posted on the county website, and copies of such notice of meeting distributed to the supervisors and media via email on Monday, July 13th, 2020.
That constitutes legal notice.
Roll call.
Brad Olson?
Here.
Doug Rode?
Here.
Steve Warndall?
Here.
Chris Nelson?
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc?
Here.
Ryan Masters?
Here.
Michael Christian?
Here.
Sharon Kelly?
Here.
Kim O'Connell? Amy Middleton?
Here.
Jay Luke?
Here.
Fran Duncanson?
Here.
Russ Arcand?
Here.
John Bonaprise?
Here.
Joe Demmeling?
Here.
We have everyone here. All 15.
Supervisor Bonaprise, want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America.
On our agenda, line 5, disclosure, any conflicts of interest. We just ask for a raise of hands when we get to that agenda item. On line 6, we have approval of the agenda. I ask for there to be a slight change on the under 11, under appointments made by County Board Chair. I'd like to move number 2, confirmation to Supervisor District 6 for Brian Masters to be moved to the end of the agenda so he can serve out this meeting. And we will do that right in front of supervisors' announcements. John Bonaprise made the first, Supervisor Warndall second. Okay, do I take that now or do we do one at a time? So we do need to wait for a second on the motion to change the agenda. Second by Jay Luke. Now, do you want to amend that motion or do you have something new?
Could you please use your microphone? I don't know if the folks on the web could get it. So there's two procedural options. He could either move to amend the motion that was made already to include that change. So it would be to amend the previous motion to include a postponing to a date certain of that topic, or he could wait, withdraw this motion because there's already a motion pending and make a subsequent motion after you vote on the move of 11A2.
Yeah, so I think to keep it cleaner, let's vote on the motion to move the supervisor, one that John and Jay did, and then we will come back before we approve that agenda. Supervisor Warndall will take that motion up. All in favor of the moving of the supervisor line to the end of the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. that a question? You have a hand up, Supervisor Masters?
Oh, I was just waiting.
Okay.
I will, yeah.
Supervisor Warndall, go ahead and you want to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Yes, to strike 15A from the agenda for this meeting, to allow the new developed group that's going to be weighing in on all our trail situations to have a chance to review it and have their input on it.
Sure. So that your motion is to
Just remove it from the agenda and visit it at another time.
To a date certain. So what's your date certain?
We're just getting that group started, so I would say September at the earliest.
Okay. So the motion is to hold off on resolution 20-20. That'd be 15A to September. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Second by Fran. Supervisor O'Connell, is there any discussion?
We keep putting it off for no reason. It doesn't make any sense. We've had all the public hearings. We've went through all this. The tag group is not just for the Stour Trail. It's for all the campgrounds and everything. Could be 3 years before it comes up. We're just putting everything off as usual. Doesn't make any sense. We've had all the studies. We have packets of paper for this already. Now you want to put it off again? That's my opinion.
Supervisor Masters?
Well, I don't see why we should put it off. It's already on our agenda. Starting this report, Southern Lake Stour Trail Master. Nothing up. Have a look at it.
Supervisor Rowdy?
Yes, just one comment. I don't know if IT could do it, but if we could pan into the room upstairs, it's full of people that want to see how this, because all of our work comes out.
Yeah, we're not, I mean, I don't think that's a part of our agenda to pan in on the room. Yeah, sure. Okay, there's the room. There's all the people. Supervisor Middleton.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Kim, I totally hear you on this, and I, as thinking in this through on the planning side of what this tag is supposed to be doing, we're supposed to be looking big picture, countywide. We're supposed to start doing trail connectivity and, you know, really kind of putting our nose to the grindstone. And I hate to come out of the chute right away with this controversial displacement of users on the Stour, which has been this high-profile, controversial, long-standing trail. So it's just hard for me to kind of get the cart before the horse. So I'm with Steve on that. I do want to hear the presentation. I think Tool's here, so I don't think Steve's at all saying we shouldn't do that.
Does anyone else have anything else? I know I'd like to make a comment, but as county board chair, can I make a comment or do I have to step down?
Chair?
Okay, excuse me. We got Supervisor Demling. Can you raise your hand, Pritchard or Demling, who wants to talk? Okay, Supervisor Demling.
Just a question that I did not hear a single word that Brian said. I see he did not have his microphone up.
So his mic isn't working. Do you really want to hear what he has to say again, Supervisor Demling?
I know now, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Masters, would you like to say one more time to the public what you thought you were saying?
I said since this is already on our agenda as a presentation by the Stour Lakes Master Trail Plan, I believe that we should look at this closely. And like Kim said, we've been putting this off long enough. Let's take a look at it and have some discussion on it, if anything. Thank you.
Well, I think I can just relinquish the chair. In my opinion, would be as it's on the agenda. If there's enough votes here to not want to pass it on, you can certainly vote against it tonight. But I've been watching this since I've been on the board for 5 years, and the county has spent numerous dollars of money, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. There's nothing that the tag, I'm part of the tag, Supervisor Warndall. It's just interesting, it's the new supervisors here tonight that are trying to catch up, and I get it. But we've been dealing with this for a long time, so what I would encourage us to do is, if you don't want to pass it, then vote no on it tonight. Or amend it up when we get to it on the agenda, but to remove it from the agenda, just after staff and everyone's put all this work into it, you certainly don't have to vote for it. So I personally do not believe the tag would bring any resolution to this whatsoever, in my opinion.
Roll call then, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor O'Connell, you have your hand up. You're from Environmental Services. We probably should hear from you about this again.
Well, this will come up in a tag, so it can be changed. This isn't written in stone.
Right.
So I mean, it changes when that committee meets. And stuff, things can change like it is now.
This is being sent to the DNR, correct?
Yes, it's when it's forced, it's sent for the DNR to see if it's done.
Supervisor Downing, you got anything more? No? Sorry, we can't hear you, Joe.
Must have turned this thing off. Yeah, no.
All right, well,
Roll call.
we had a roll call vote. Just call the roll call right now, that'd be good, so we call the roll call vote.
Yep.
So the vote is, the amendment was to remove it from the agenda. So a yes would mean it's removed from the agenda until September. A no means it stays on the agenda. Is that,
No, you got it backwards.
huh?
Oh, okay.
A yes would support Supervisor Warndall's motion to hold it off till September. So that's saying, yes, we want to not deal with it tonight, not vote on it. Right? Is that correct, Supervisor Warndall? You don't want to vote on it tonight. All right. A no would mean we're leaving it on the agenda.
That's what I
You
have.
understand? Okay.
Yep. Okay, Kim O'Connell. Amy Middleton. Jay Luke.
No.
Fran Duncanson.
Yeah.
Russ Arkand.
No.
John Bonaprise. Brad Olson.
No.
Doug Rowdy.
No.
Steve Warndall.
Yes.
Tracy LeBlanc. Brian Masters.
No.
Michael Pritchard.
Yes is to take it off the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Joe Demoing. Joe Demoing. Do you have a vote?
Joe, do you have a vote? So we can't hear you. Joe, how about a yes and a thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
Yes. So Joe, you want to remove it from the agenda? Yes? Okay, that works. So I vote no.
So we have. Yep, 9-5.
9-5, motion,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm sorry.
10-5.
10 no's. I'm sorry. 10 no's and 5 yeses. Okay.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda? You wanted to move supervisor's announcements after the Varesco. Do we have a second? Supervisor Rowdy, seconded. Any questions? All in favor by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda? First. Second, Amy. All in favor? Same sign by no. All right. So we got matters offered for the adoption on the consent agenda. A, consideration corrections to the published minutes from June 16th County Board meeting. Do we have motion to approve? Supervisor Masters, second by LeBlanc. Any discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Approved. Comment. We have 3 minutes per person. It looks like we have people that are up to discuss public comment. We have a 3 minute per person limit, and we will not exceed 30 minutes, and it's basically 18 minutes after 6, so that's when our clock will start. We'll take our first public comment.
All right, we have 7, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me?
We have 7 total up here.
Okay, thank you. Please state your name and the town you're from.
My name's Doug Johnson. I live down by Amory. I'm part of the Polk County Snowmobile and ATV Council, and I just want to make a comment on item 15A, the resolution number 2020, and say I'm so thankful it did not get removed from the agenda. I know that people in the county have been working very hard for the last 17 years to see this issue through, and hopefully with the passage of this resolution this evening, we can move this on to the Department of Natural Resources without any more trouble. Any more delays on this would certainly affect us in the snowmobile season. Putting this off in the county arena until September would effectively eliminate us this coming winter, no matter how things go. So I'm just very happy that we've gotten this far. And I want to thank you all for working as hard as you've done on this, county board supervisors and staff people. Thank you.
We'll just go in order, it's probably easier. I think we got time.
Good evening, my name is Elvin Smith from Bluff, Wisconsin. I work with the Milltown Snowmobile Council or Snowmobile Club and the Polk County Council and the Luck ATV Club. I wish the 2020 to be moved on. I believe that it's gone through its course and needs to be moved on. Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Good evening. My name is Brooke Wallen. I reside in the town of Bone Lake. I am the president of the Friends of Stour.
Could you speak up, please? We can't hear you.
Certainly. Hello, my name is Brooke Wallen. I live in the town of Bone Lake. I am also the president of Friends of Stour 7 Lakes State Trail. Just wanted you all to know that this trail is open to anybody and everybody at any time. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. The trail is open to the public. Supervisor Rowdy indicated that this room up here is full of people that are looking forward to seeing this resolution pass or something to that effect. That is incorrect. There are people here that are not at all excited about the prospect of putting horses on the Stour 7 Lakes State Trail. If you do put horses on the Stour 7 Lakes State Trail, which is for all practical purposes a 13-mile long park, maybe we can look forward to perhaps putting horses on other county parks. I don't think that's a reasonable thing, just like I don't think it's very reasonable to put horses in close proximity to people who are on bicycles and the like. May not be all that nice either to put snowmobiles next to cross-country skiers and other people, pedestrians who are utilizing that trail in the wintertime. So I do encourage the supervisors to vote no on this particular plan that's before the county. It would make a lot more sense if you were looking at the state trails from a comprehensive standpoint to back up, let the Parks and Trails Advisory Group do its thing, and then go ahead and make plans for the Stour. Remember too that horses are already allowed on the Cattail State Trail. As far as I know, that's basically not used by the horse community, nor do I don't believe the horse community puts any resources into that particular trail. So please keep that in mind when that vote, when that issue comes up. Thank you.
Sir, you want to go? Okay, Mike, you want to?
My name is Mike Miles, and I live in Georgetown. Today may well be one of the most important county board meetings in memory. It could determine the makeup of our county board till the spring election in 2022. Chairman Nelson has the authority to make appointments, but what happens with his suggestions is clearly up to the board. You can rubber stamp his choices and have a simple majority of the board tell the residents of the 6th and 8th districts who their supervisors will be for the next 21 months with absolutely no input from them. Several thousand residents will be completely disenfranchised. Or you as county board members have the authority to make the appointments temporary until a special election happens next spring. The first option makes our county look more like a fiefdom with representation by declaration. The second recognizes that democracy is participatory and that representation is solely in the hands of those being governed. Democracy was never intended to be easy or cheap. The defenders and framers of the Constitution know that the cost of freedom is counted in both blood and treasure. Whatever decisions any level of jurisdiction thought they would be making as 2020 began have been completely preempted by the global pandemic. All of the guideposts and formulas that were relied on for guidance in the past have been decisively and perhaps permanently changed. Imagination and critical thinking are going to be more in demand than knowledge and experience. Are you as a board ready to embrace the new skills that will be necessary to do more than kick the can down the road? I'm under no illusion that Chairman Nelson has any intention of considering me as a potential supervisor for the 6th district. I've spent the last 40 years as a type of public servant, both educating and advocating on a variety of both local and national concerns. I have lived by the advice of John Lewis to never be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. I know what it means to be under the scrutiny of public opinion and have willingly accepted the outcome of my actions. When I started substitute teaching as a form of public service, there was more than one school administrator who wondered, what is he up to? Why is he here? 27 years later, I still like going to school and have been told by different administrations, good things happen when you're in the building. I love where I live, and I love the county vision statement to improve the lives of everyone who lives, works, and plays in Polk County. Somehow or another, we will be working together on common cause, and I wish everyone who cares enough to participate in promoting the common good Godspeed and good luck in all your endeavors. Thank you.
Howard Paul, Trade Lake. The last meeting I was up here, it was extremely difficult to hear the board and what they were saying. And the same problem exists tonight. Since that meeting, I have talked to some of the other county representatives and have gone back and taken a look at how the Polk County Board is operating. And they maybe have some issues that they should take a look at. Number one is how they passed this swine resolution. I don't know this as a fact, but it appears that they may be in violation of the Walking Quorum Act, and I'm sure you probably haven't even read that in your handbook. You should read that. The other thing I was looking at was the open meetings laws. And that law says that you have to accommodate the public in a comfortable manner and in a manner that everybody can plainly hear and understand what is going on at the meeting. And that is not happening. And your IT guy has had time here to work on that. And again, tonight, most of what is being said in this meeting, we can't understand. And you know, if the residents of the county want fair and honest government, you need to open up your meetings so that everybody can understand what's going on and not make decisions before meetings occur and be more honest and open. And that's all I got to say tonight. Thank you.
I just wanted to, is this coming up backwards for you people? Common sense hog farming. Okay, Mary Curran, town of Eureka. In case some of you snuck in the back way, you might not have noticed there was a whole pile of us out in the front there. Probably 75 to 100 people. So I just want to really let you know that that's just the tip of the iceberg here. So I would just really be very aware of this concentrated animal feeding thing that you think that Polk County should have. Some of you do think that. Interesting time that this is happening. In my young farming days, this would have been kind of the tail end of the milking. So there maybe weren't too many farmers in our group, but there were some. And there are some market gardeners and a lot of other people that are very attached to the land and the air and the water and the whole shebang of what we call country living. And all I'm saying to you is you better please take this seriously, because that is just the tip of the iceberg out there with those folks. Believe me, the shoreline people may seem to think that they might be, the cabin people, lake people, maybe they're protected, I don't know. But I can tell you that a lot of us aren't in that category, and we are going to fight for a right to breathe clean air. We are going to fight to save our wells from the water pollution. And we are going to fight to be able to go out and pick our garden produce without being swarmed by an innumerable amount of flies that don't go away. So do be aware that this is not something to just take too lightly. And please listen to your public health department. Please listen to all of the people that are coming forward with good information and good studies and all of that kind of thing. Don't throw them in the wastebasket. You will be sorry if you do that. So forge ahead, do good work, and be aware that we are here for Polk County, everybody, the farmers and everybody. See, supporting farmers. Common sense hog farming. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, that's everyone in the West.
Thank you. So that's the end of our public comments. County Board Chair Report. Folks, we have one on WebEx. Do we have any public comments on WebEx? Excuse me.
I have one if you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead. State your name and where you're from.
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg Marston from the Intercounty Leader newspaper. And I wanted to be there personally tonight and address both you and Supervisor Masters if I could, but unfortunately, some health issues have arisen that I'll tell you about. But I apologize if any assertions were made of your character or intent. Any implications on your actions on cronyism or whatever I suggested are through my poor choice of explanation and a misleading headline. I've known both of you for many years. I've always respected, admired your levels of involvement and dedication. And in all avenues, I've respected you as men, neighbors, and supervisors. And I don't think otherwise. And if any other implication was taken, it falls solely on me. And just so you know, I've offered my resignation to my editor. I'm addressing this under the assumption of an unclear employment future. But as I told Chairman Nelson, if anything good comes from this, I'd like it to be a sincere look at some of the issues that I raised, which is that Polk County really has no policy whatsoever to replace elected supervisors, in spite of what you've been told. And what it does is it contributes to a general mistrust of the appointment system. No policy whatsoever means the board is essentially guided by the state fallback procedure of either calling a special election or one person choosing an appointment. And I define that almost on its face as abject, intrinsic cronyism, regardless of who is the appointer, who is the appointee, be it Chairman Nelson, Johansson, Johnson, Baszler, Getchell, Luke, whoever. It's the issue that if anyone wants to read more into it, I apologize. But I wanted to show that regardless of what happens with these two appointments, somebody other than the electors decided. And let's face it, we haven't had two vacancies at once in recent memory, let alone when the board was so much smaller with only a few months into the term. It's a perfect storm of conditions with no apparent policy, and I was shocked at the basic deferment to the state, which is kind of an afterthought for the process of filling a vacancy. In a world of lengthy county, state, and federal policies, endless software user agreements, multi-page MOUs that right there in that room, as well as numerous RFPs with distinct and detailed direction, and yet the legal process for filling a county board supervisor vacancy is legally stringent than choosing a spotter at the gym or finding someone to help you load furniture. Falling back under the state statute of 59.10 is a political equivalent of just get her done. It's a system that bypasses resident and voter involvement altogether, lets the chair appoint someone, assumably who's not too objectionable, so mere approval allows them to get on it. And I don't know, maybe you're okay with that. I have a problem with it. But as I noted, there's also a legislative directive allowing a special election, spends more time on the dates of that election than any real details. But without any standards, that fallback policy of chairperson appointment is cronyism, whether it's real or perceived. And yes, it's always been cronyism to some extent. And that's what I was pointing out and continue to become adjunctly nauseous over. Maybe in politics of late, we've come to expect some level of cronyism in government. We've been numbed to politicization of everything. I mean, even germs have implied political biases now. Yet appointments are often considered the spoils of victory, and many times a winning political victor in recent years reminds that elections have consequences. And it's true, but recent history also shows that lame duck times between swearing in, there's plenty of time for the unsuccessful side to impact the consequences of an election somehow. In fact, the state Supreme Court even weighed in on it in recent weeks with a decidedly political take on the issue. With that, I say cronyism has many faces, either on purpose or by accident, from ethically questionable lame duck action that makes it difficult for whoever follows in your shoes, to making sure certain people aren't appointed in a vacant seat. And that's my point. And I'd argue that keeping people out of government or out of power for whatever reason, or ignoring voter intent, is in and of itself cronyism. And anyways, with those two appointments at once, with almost 2 years of a term to go, Chairman Nelson, you can't win. And without a true process, either a chair's choices are flawed or they were genius. Either he sought the right candidate or it makes no sense. He can't win and the voters are left to hang on the impact. In legal circles, there's a phrase that possession is 9/10 of the law, implying that 90% of something or anything is just about the whole thing. It's a significant, if not nearly total portion of a product or a supervisor's term. It's the other factor in this. So much of the terms are remaining. I could put up a pie chart showing that, but 9/10 of the law is a pretty good analogy about this. But the fact remains, Polk County has no policy to replace their supervisor, period. Irregardless of any condition, supervisor passes away, moves, quits, is convicted of something, or becomes incapacitated. Irregardless of whether they decide to even take the seat or quit or move the next day, or if the race was decided by a handful of votes, or if it was even a tie. No policy whatsoever. My point is that a special election is the only viable option. Shows you really care about these and all future appointments. It's not just this time, it is the future. And I know people have weighed on this and publicly insulted me, and they might not be fans of special elections for whatever reason, but they're usually hyper-partisan approaches. I believe that a state might say a special election is kind of a guardrail, just like the appointment issue is. But now Polk County has reduced their board to 15 supervisors, expected to cover even larger geographical areas and unique interests. For those people saying we need someone to fill the seat immediately because of all the work that's got to be done, I note that we went 8 months without any congressional representation at all, from last September until May in the 7th District. It's an area larger than Switzerland.
Greg?
Yep.
I've kind of let you go on for about 5 extra minutes, and I've had I think we kept everyone else to 3. I definitely, you made your point, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I apologize again to both of you, and I appreciate the time to both of you. And just so you know, I will not be covering this aspect of any county board procedures in the future.
Thank you. Is that the last public comment? Okay, seeing public comment is finished, now officially done. Number 9,
Excuse
County
me?
Board.
I had asked to give public comment as well.
Okay, let's state your name.
My name is Heidi, and I called yesterday to request to give public comment. And I want to talk about this hour as well. My big thing is that the DNR has received a proposal, and they gave you a letter back, and they didn't get the answers that you had hoped for. So this time, they hired a firm, giving recommendations, but some of which were not taken. So let's try again. And what happens if the DNR doesn't give you what you want? Then what? What if the DNR does give you what you want? But at what cost? The proposal has multiple wells being put in, signage, additional signage, expanding parking lots, right? So we're talking, I don't know, $23,000 of an expense to change users and displace users on the Stour. Additionally, the county gets paid nearly $10,000 annually from state trail passes. How does the county board propose to make up that money? I also like to add some research about horses. There are 7 state trails in the county, in Wisconsin, excuse me, that allow horses on the same trail as biking. 2 of those trails also allow ATV use. Both of those trails also have caveats that say, caution, you're sharing a trail with riders, and all of the 7 trails do not allow snowmobiles and horses on the same trail. Now, 5 of those trails, so of the 7, 5 of them do not allow ATV use. All 5 of them have a parallel trail alongside a separate. It is not, you're not allowed on the limestone. It's adjacent. You're not allowed on the asphalt. And it's only portions of these trails. Of all of these 5 trails that allow horses, all of them are parallel, not on the surface, and all of them are only portions. So why is Polk County proposing something different? I encourage you to vote no on the resolution, or as it has already been suggested, put it back to the TAG. That's what they're there for. And allow that group to solve and figure out why and what is best for the county as a whole. And as you've heard, yeah, we've been working on this for 17 years. Well, why? Because we haven't got the answers that we wanted? Maybe it's time to look at what the community wants and why this is not happening and how is appropriate to make it happen instead of wasting our taxpayer money and time and your time and effort.
Thank you.
Leave it as it is.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. Are there any other public comments? I'll ask one more time. Are there any other public comments? Okay, it is over. County Board Chair Report. We're moving on. County Board Chair Report. There's too much to say what a guy has to do this job. I can tell you guys that right now. And it doesn't pay enough either. So I guess the last month I've been dealing with, you know, mostly people calling for questions. I probably respond about 20 letters a month. The last 2 months, I think, has been probably the hardest on your time is actually doing the vetting, right, of the county supervisors. Had no idea what was involved when you have to pick a county supervisor and what the laws are for that. So you talk to corporation counsel, you talk to previous chairs, you look at policy, and you try to determine what are you supposed to do. And clearly, trying to find a supervisor to succeed Jim was a big undertaking, and to find someone that I thought would that he would respect, and that was kind of the guide. And I'm biased to professional, middle of the road people with experience, people that want to get the job done and what's best for Polk County. I'm biased to someone that did not have an agenda. So clearly, this chair is biased, and that's what I did. And I and what I did during that process this last month was to really reach out to the communities, and that's a lot of phone calls, and vet these people. And I actually did it through our executive meeting. So clearly, I want to let the public know that's what I do. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that I do. The other thing I'd like to say is that I am I took Jim Edgel's spot on environmental services. I want to thank the other supervisors that stepped up and took care of some of Jim's issues too. So that's as much as I got for my chair report. Supervisors reports from outside meetings attended. I'll just take a raise of hands. Supervisor Duncanson.
Yeah, I just have a couple of brief reports. I attended the board meeting of Arnell Memorial Humane Society. They are working on fundraising. Part of that was the Give Big campaign. Also, they are looking at quite a large project for them, which would be some concrete work and repairs of one of the kennels they have in a dog area. The other one I attended was the Apple River District. Their annual meeting is coming up in August. They've been busy working on their budget, and they were very pleased to report, which I will pass along. All you folks who live in the Apple River District, there will be no increase in the levy dollars that they're asking for this year. And that, coupled with increase in value, should show up as a lower tax rate for you on your tax bill from them.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any Supervisor Rowdy?
Yes, last Saturday I attended the Bone Lake Management District meeting, and it was done via Zoom. And the big issue that they're dealing with is how to conduct their annual meeting. And they're going to set it up on a part Zoom type meeting, but they're also trying to film it at Wilkins. And their big issue is they have to, there's a term is run out for one of the members, and the only way in their rules of order that they can do it is to a physical ballot. So that's the hurdle that they're trying to overcome. So they're going to do it out in the parking lot, and people can drive in and get a ballot vote and leave. And that was the best they could come up with it.
Sure.
So that's most of it.
Any other outside meetings attended, updates? Supervisor Bottom-Price has taken a big load on, and maybe this is a good time for you to tell everyone, John, everything that you are doing for Polk County and what you got put on. Can you use your mic, John?
I'll make it as brief and informative as I can. I took Larry Jepson's place as the county representative to Wisconsin Counties Association, which we're all a member of. The Wisconsin Counties Association is the largest lobbyist to the legislature. Their executive coordinator is Dan. No, he's the executive director, Dan Barr, yeah. And I believe he was at the environmental committee, a couple of weeks ago? I didn't get a chance to meet him at that meeting. And one correction on that, the ledger said that it was Attorney Dan Barr, and they made a correction and apologized to that. Dan is not an attorney, but he is a very, very forceful lobbyist for the Wisconsin counties. The 5 steering committees that I've got appointed to, most of them are only 1 or 2, but it was an appointment to from the state president. I served 2005 and 6 as vice president and president-elect of Wisconsin County, so I was kind of familiar. But anyway, the steering committees are the Health and Human Services, the Personnel and Finance, Highway and Public Works, Ag, Environmental, and the Judicial. And so there was somebody from the staff with me. Normally, they meet 3 times a year at Stevens Point, but fortunately they were all done on Zoom it started last Friday through Thursday. And one of the staff members was with me at each one of the meetings last Friday. Tanya was with me, and Brad Chesnowski and Mo from the highway. And so they were very informative. I'm sure all you staff people took home something. We're very appreciative. I think 2 of the big points to take home, each county had resolutions. And so at those steering meetings, we voted on which resolution that we wanted Dan Barr to take to the legislators. There was a lot of different ones. The Thursday, we had the Polk County resolution for the 3 strikes law, and I introduced that. Unfortunately, that did not pass, but the good thing is some people in different counties, they did vote for the resolution. So there was a lot of discussion. It was brought to the forefront, and that was a good thing. I think all in all, in the 5 days, I think the biggest thing that I caught that they were probably going to push for is the 0% of tax levy that started 10 years ago with Governor Walker, and it's been enforced for 10 years. So county, school district, nobody could increase their levy except for new construction. And so with the trouble that financial trouble the counties are in, I think that is going to be lobbied for very, very hard. And I just kind of think that maybe the legislature is going to see that counties probably have to be allowed to increase their levy to whatever their particular county is. Another thing that was really talked about that would affect everyone is there's some talk about raising sales tax from 5.5% to 6%. And I don't know how that's going to turn out. We'll find out. But it will be a topic in the legislature this next session, which will start in November. Polk County, I thought, with the help of the staff urgently, I think we did a pretty good job of representation.
Thanks, John, and I do apologize because I nominated every committee. So it's my fault. I didn't think they would pick on everyone, but I did give you a really high recommendation in my letter.
They kind of picked on me.
I tell you what, that's a big deal what John's doing and taking that on. And, you know, and I asked for Polk County to be represented at that, at every level. And I just want to appreciate John's.
But Chair, the big thing I tried to get across is that St. Croix, right in our area, St. Croix and Polk County and Burnett, we're border counties, and they don't have a clue of the problems we have with crime and you know, everything that we are. St. Croix and Polk County are members of the 9-county Metropolitan Council.
I'm sure you're going to pound it home, so I really appreciate it again. Anyone else?
I did try.
Yes. Anybody else with outside committee? Okay. So,
Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me just say I want to thank all of you, the supervisors, and I want to thank the staff for the goal setting and priority setting exercise we went through this afternoon. A little extra time took you away from your home or your work earlier. I thought it was a great meeting. I really am excited about the priorities that you set and the steps we're going to take going forward, because I think with this board and with our staff, we're going to have some great vision, some great actions going forward. So thank you. Let me give you an update on COVID, because that's kind of the big issue that's taken over much of my time, or at least a portion of it. And I'll give you an update. It's in the news every day. You hear everything, and I think it's important that we hear local information as much as possible. As of today at 1 o'clock, we have just under 5,000 people tested. So we have come up dramatically in the number of people who are getting tested now. Total positives since the beginning of all this is 88. So 88 out of just under 5,000. The positivity rate, meaning of all those tested, how many were positive, and it's under 1.8%. Just as a comparator, the state today was at 5.8%. We have, of those 88, 68 have recovered. Currently, as of today, there are 18 active patients or patients who are being isolated. And there are a lot of subtleties under these things. So there are 18 people that are active. That's 18 too many. We do know that several of them are in close contact with one another, related, same household, different things like that, that says there's some connection there. We have had 2 deaths associated with this, and I think, as has been said several times, an associated death, and they had several underlying conditions. The point is this is not going away. We still have it. We still have to take it seriously, but I think we need to continue our common sense and our good judgment, keep up the fundamental practices of spacing and washing our hands. We have worked on this building. We continue the consistent cleaning and the spacing requirements. We encourage masks, and we are doing the things that we think are making our employees safe as well as the public coming in. But I think one of the things we want to do is make sure that our folks here in the county understand our numbers and our situation. And so I wanted to make sure you heard that. The other thing that our health department has indicated is that the folks, for some reason, I'm no scientist, but for some reason, the folks who are contracting the virus in Polk County and elsewhere, the symptoms in general are relatively milder, which is a good thing. I believe as of yesterday, we had none of the patients are in the hospital. We do have a couple who have some serious symptoms, but the others, they are milder symptoms, and that's a good thing. If we know anything about viruses, sometimes they mutate. Sometimes they mutate right out of existence. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's not an unusual direction. So we are going to work to improve our local reporting, not just report what we hear from the state. What we hear from the state, what we hear from the national level is good. We got to have that, but we also are going to try over the next week develop our own dashboard that will enable us to input some of our local information so we have a better idea of what's happening right here. Regarding expenses, you've been keeping track of that. I'm happy to say that the expenses associated directly with COVID have flattened a little bit. They've been maintained. We're right around that $100,000 spent on improving equipment, safety measures, and so on. And we do think that much of that will be reimbursed through the federal government when this is over. We are continuing our cost-saving measures, including the hiring freeze where possible. We're monitoring our current and new sources of funding, which is helping I guess will help us in the end of the year with our budget. Couple of sidebars. Sales tax. Sales tax is getting clobbered throughout the nation and throughout the state of Wisconsin. Very impressed. Polk County is just running very slightly under where they were last year. Took a big dip early. When the economy opened back up, we found that big ticket items like cars and equipment and so on, and a lot of home improvement money was being spent, and of course our local retail stores all did better. So we are doing extremely well relative to the state on sales tax. The other thing I checked with Bob down in Environmental Services, our permitting numbers are hanging in there. They're down slightly from last year, but when you consider how everything was shut down early in the year, now people are requesting permits, whether they be sewer systems or improvements to their homes or whatever, which gives me confidence that the economy here, the way we're built, the fact that I think we're homegrown and people are very encouraged to support our own is making a difference. Just got a report today as well, property taxes. That was our big unknown. Are people going to be able to pay property taxes? Obviously, we have until July 31st for those payments to come in, but we are on track real close to what has happened in the previous years. So I'm very encouraged. It sounds like people are working. They're being able to pay their bills, whether they're getting help through the federal assistance or not. But the bottom line is they're paying their bills, and that is good. We have brought people back into the office who are working remotely. Some people were not, because things work better at home. Other people, we're bringing them in periodically. Others we brought back permanently based on the process or based on how effective it worked. Switching to financial news, our audit is being finalized this week, and we will be reporting out to committees and the board in August. So there'll be more coming with that. Everything I think pretty much has looked real good, so we're okay there. FEMA, we just received our first check from last year's summer storms. That's good. So we got a small check. We expect the rest, totaling maybe $760,000 to be coming shortly thereafter. Parks Trails Advisory Group, you've heard about that. We have been collecting applicants. We will be interviewing and putting them through a selection process. We've received, I think, 17 names, but we need more. We are looking for not just people, but the right people to get on this board and to think about how we can work together to come up with solutions that will help the entire county. So if you know of people, it's great if they're advocates. They don't have to be advocates. They may be good business people, marketing people, or they may be very interested in one activity or maybe several. But we still need more applicants. And we'll be doing that interview process hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. So,
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all talking about tonight.
Okay, confirmation of appointments. Appointments made by County Board Chair. Previously, we did move the second item of District 6 Masters to the end of the agenda. I guess I'd just like to talk about all three of these before there's a motion. Obviously, Sharon Kelly's here tonight. I'm very proud to have just personally met her face-to-face tonight, had many conversations with her. I got her her name. I vetted it through people in the community. I also vetted it through our executive committee. And that was hard to find someone. No one came running out of the woodwork. So then the rest of this on here, and I don't know if we can just do it all in one bunch, but what the standing, I guess, policy's been is that the supervisor gets elected or appointed. They fill the position of the supervisor from that district. I've told both supervisors or potential supervisors that are going to be appointed that it would be up to them then to resign from a committee if they did not want to take that many responsibilities on. And if they choose to not to sit on one of the committees, they would resign. Then it would come back to the county board to have an election to see who would be appointed back to that spot, if I'm correct, right? So I think everything else ties together. And the only one non-standing one on here was Jim Edgel sat on the Polk County Housing Authority. I already made that appointment a month ago for John Modifies to fill that seat. And I don't know if that was confirmed or that's what we also need to do tonight would be to confirm John for that one. Any questions, any motions, or any of your guys' thoughts?
Mr. Chair, may I ask our council what the process has been or our policy has been? We heard that attack tonight. I think since I first got on the board in '96, I think I've been through a dozen of these. Every time I know it's always been understanding that the county chair appointed them, and they have always reached out to the local municipality for names, advice, whether it be a village or a township. And I know, Mr. Chair, you have done that, and you also brought it to the executive committee, the names, and our executive committee was unanimous in reaffirming your choices. But my question is to our council.
Certainly. So under Wisconsin statute 59.10 sub 3E, that addresses vacancies. I think there was some question earlier about, a policy that the board could set. So I think it was unforeseeable that we would have two vacancies so close to one another with the tragic loss of Mr. Edgel and the fact that Mr. Masters' house sold in 4 days or something amazing like that. So I think this was unforeseen. Normally when there's maybe one a term, I don't think there's as much controversy. So at the next organizational committee meeting, which would be when the newest board is sat in 2022, you could, because we have adopted home rule, you could decide, if there's new vacancies this next go around, let's put some other procedure in place. But you don't have that. This board has never had that. In fact, you only became self-organized, I believe, in the early 2000s. So that gives us 59 sub 10. And in the vacancy, it's clear that the county board chair appoints, and the board has the option of approving that appointment, or I suppose not approving that appointment. There is a process for a special election. If the board were to request a special election, the supervisor that is appointed and confirmed would serve until a replacement through a spring election of the following year. So you'd be basically cutting the term in half between now and the expiration of the term. That is certainly an option, but then you would have to anticipate and hope for candidates, and you would be asking the people that just were appointed to turn around in a few months and then run a campaign, which may or may not cause them to want to accept the appointment. So those are kind of the options and pitfalls, but it's clear in statute that that's the process.
Thank you. So would we to kind of put some framework and codify a process around new appointments? Are you saying that under that statute, we don't do that until 2022? Or is that something that the exec committee can put in writing and we can amend or add to our rules of order?
Oh, good question. You could amend the rules of order at any time, but it would require a 2/3 majority of the county board. So that could happen anytime for future vacancies, but that would require a 2/3 vote of the county board to amend the rules of order.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to that right now, Mr. Chair?
It's not on the agenda, but you could certainly ask that it be placed on a future agenda.
Okay.
So I'll address that question. So it's been an interesting few weeks, right? So I had a supervisor write me a letter, a few of them, and asked for me to appoint him. And then my letter back was to say, so he was very comfortable with me appointing him. And then when I wrote my letter back saying that that selection had been made, thank you very much, then all of a sudden it all blew up, and then we had the cronyism article, and then we had the we want a special election. So, but what I did talk to, I'll address public comment from Greg, that I did tell him that I would ask the executive committee to at least look at this issue and discuss it, and I will ask them to put it on their agenda. And so I did make that, I will ask, we don't have a chair of the executive committee after tonight, they'll have to be appointed, so the chair will have to approve that being on the agenda, but I have asked for that. Supervisor Bonifay.
Another question to our council. If the way it stands now, we aren't going to have one, but in case we would have a spring election, if it would have been in the process, that would not happen in 2020 anyway, would it? Because of the time.
Well, just to be clear, if the vacancy had occurred before, I think it's June 1st. So if the vacancy had occurred before June 1st, and I believe Mr. Edgell passed away early June, but it was after the 1st, that would have caused an election automatically.
Yep.
But because it's after that, then the board has the option within the statute. So you could amend the county board rules of order to make it absolutely clear in the future. But right now, there is the option of appointing and then still having the appointment only run until the special election in the spring of 2021.
Correct.
Supervisor Duncanson.
I'm just asking this just because I'm curious that I haven't encountered it before. Would you have to handle each vacancy in the same manner? Could one, for example, one vacancy be appointed and approved and the other vacancy go to an election?
Yes, they can be handled differently, and I think that's where we're going to put on the executive agenda, and I think we'll all have a chance to really understand this. And I just hope everyone else stays healthy for the next year and a half, please. And no one move. Any other questions about just, so I'm looking for a motion to approve Sharon Kelly to place her on the county board. So we got a first by Supervisor Masters. We have a second by Supervisor Luke. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried by unanimous vote. And thank you, Sharon. We welcome you very much. Oh, and the oath of office, Supervisor Kelly, you have taken the oath of office already? All right, thank you.
That's for Jim Edgell's seat.
That's correct. Yeah. Appointments made by county administrator.
Are there other two appointments?
Well, you kind of did. You did them all as one group.
Okay, the one appointment that's up is for the Board of Adjustments. Yes?
No.
Oh, okay. What happened to that?
That got moved at the beginning of the agenda to the end of the agenda. Yes.
Board of Adjustments appointed his time, it is due. Tim Laux' time was due. He had expressed an interest to continue, and I have appointed Tim, with your approval, back to the Board of Adjustments. He has been the chairman for the last several years, and he's been on the board for, I think, over 11 years now. And so I think he's a good representative. He's the only one that expressed interest, and he did it wholeheartedly, so I was happy he did. So
we'd entertain a motion for Tim. Supervisor Duncanson, second in Arcan. Any other discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Who said aye? John Bonner Price. All right. We are on number 12, updates regarding COVID-19 community service. So the next two, on 12 and 13, these are presentation and updates. And we're just going to let staff do their presentation. It's not going to be open up for a discussion and debate. They're just giving us updates on where we're at today. So are we doing a COVID? Okay.
If I may, I'll kick this off. The questions were coming up because schools and other people should notice that Polk County was at high risk. And it caught us all a little off guard, and the schools are saying because we are labeled as high risk, which by the way, there are only a handful of counties in Wisconsin that are not labeled as high risk. The question's coming up, well, how did the state come up with this rating? And so I've asked Tanya to kind of show us the dashboard, show us what's on there, and then to explain how the state came up with this formula that affects us.
Can everybody see that okay? Or do you need it a little bit bigger? Okay, so this is right on our Polk County homepage on the website. How many of you have seen it before? Okay, so you're checking it regularly, I hope. So this is something that we worked with Brad in, is it Land and Zoning Office in GIS coordinator, to create this dashboard for us so we could have more real-time information for the public to be able to know where we're at with the pandemic. And I'm going to reduce that just a little bit first. So on here, what you'll see is our daily counts. We try to have them updated by 1 or 1:30 each day. So we are getting that information up to Brad. So you'll see the total number of negatives for the county, total number of positives. We're sitting at 88 right now.
So does that come in?
Sure.
No, we're not gonna take questions.
Okay.
Here's what I was gonna say. If people have questions about either one of these presentations, you're not Health and Human Services. So you'll be able to dig into all those. And committees are where we ask our questions. Okay. So we're gonna just let staff do their presentation.
And you can email me too if you have questions, and we'll be happy to answer those. Okay. Okay, so the number of isolated, like Vince mentioned before, that's the number of people who have tested positive and who are on a quarantine. So they've been asked to stay home and isolate themselves for the 14 days or until their symptoms are over. Number of recovered is 68, and then the deaths are there too, unfortunately. So this is a new addition, and I think this is kind of where we wanted some explanation. It's causing a lot of discussion in the community. When you see the high risk, high activity level, it's kind of scary. And this is what the schools are using to determine what's driving their sports activities, schools opening, and those types of things. So the question is, how does the state come up with, or who came up with this? First of all, it's the state who is giving reading us each week. So I'm going to drill into how they get that information. So, so the link is right on the website. So if this is too much information, you guys can go in there and play around and again, ask us the questions afterwards. So what they do is they look at a couple of different things. They're looking at the burden. So the burden is the number of cases per 100,000 population. Our population is 43,590 as of 2018. So that's the number they're going with. So they calculate what our burden is based off of dividing that out and getting that number for us. And also trajectory. So trajectory is what's the level of positive cases in the last 7 days. So I'll go down, and every county in the state is listed. So if you look on here, Polk County is right here. So we had 22 positives last Wednesday. This is updated every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Our burden was 50. So per 100,000, 50 people would have the disease. The trajectory right here is NA, because if you slide over one more, our trend shows a bar that goes this way. That means there's no statistical significance. So they can't say if it's increasing or decreasing based on their based on the number of cases that we're reporting. So So we have that information, and then we keep going down, and we've got a table here that says, okay, so if your burden, remember ours is 50, if your burden is greater than 10, but less than or equal to 50, you're considered a moderate. Along with your trajectory, percentage of changes. So if we had no significant change, the line that went that way, they can't say if it's shrinking or growing. So based on those two, because we had moderate and no significant, or moderately high, I think it was, no moderately high, no significant, then that puts us in that high level. Don't ask me how they're doing the math on this. Well, there's a lot of science behind it, and that's where we wanted to take our local information to put it into perspective for you. You know, obviously there's counties that have a lot higher incidence of the disease. We feel like we're doing pretty good in Polk County. Like Vince said earlier, it's 1.77, round up 1.8% of positivity. State rate I checked today, and those numbers change every day, is 5.6%. So what we will do is put that information right on our dashboard. So I can click go to that, maybe. We want to have that information for you. So over here will be, it'll give you a rating. We're low, moderate, or high. And then you can see right here, we're 1.8. I think they're working on adding the state rate for us, just to put it into perspective. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, definitely go to their committee meetings and ask questions and contact health people directly. So next item was a same kind of idea, presentation update on concentrated feed operations in Polk County. Is that Bob or Jason going to do this?
Teamwork.
Teamwork.
Good job.
What Jason Cheeseth is handing out is a, well, we like to look at it as just a snapshot of what the Environmental Services Division, as well as the Environmental Services Governing Committee has done year to date. We thought we'd do a handout because it's something that you could share and disseminate with your constituents or folks you meet, other key stakeholders. In fact, for those folks who are participating on WebEx or online, if you'd like a copy of this particular update, feel free to email either Jason or I. And I invite the media as well. This is I think, a comprehensive, again, update of the work that's been done. Chairman Nelson, County Board, thank you for the opportunity just to do this update. I think this is helpful. There is a need to do some outreach and educate where we're at with the process, and particularly with the broader community. One thing I will say before I go through this is, Wisconsin's livestock facility law envisions areas of local control and local decision-making. Again, Wisconsin's large-scale livestock facility law really envisions the concept of local control and local decision-making. And so with this intent of the law, I think it's important just to share with you all the work that the ES committee has been doing and demonstrating in an effort to move forward on developing some type of regulation, some type of local control to protect the health, welfare, and safety not only of our residents, but probably, or even more importantly, some folks think, our environment. And we take that seriously. So to better understand the work of the committee, please refer to your handout. This is simply an update. It's in 4 parts, and I know we are dealing with some time constraints, so we'll try to paraphrase some of this, but the 4 parts are this. I'll start with a quick timeline, and then we'll look at what some other outside agencies do and what their involvement are in terms of oversight of large-scale agricultural operations. And then I'm going to invite our just exceptional zoning administrator, Jason Cheeseth, to come up and talk about the options for regulation, for CAFO regulations, and what our governing committee's path, why they took the path of the conditional use permit. And then I think Jason's going to wrap it up with a real quick review of what conditions our governing committee, there's 17 total, have come up with that create that extra layer of conditions that need to be met by a developer in order to consider setting up shop or operations in Polk County. So with that in mind, the timeline, I'm not going to go through all the dates. I'll start off with that first bullet point, April 17, 2019. That's 15 months ago. There was a meeting in Burnett County, perhaps some of you were there, where I think some staff met with a proposed large-scale swine livestock facility consultant, and it was discussed that perhaps some support businesses or waste stream or things of that nature could be located not only in Polk County, but also in adjacent counties here in northwest Wisconsin. Thereafter, that August, September, there was a lot of education, outreach, a lot of learning events that staff and committee and the county board attended to learn about regulation and this particular topic. I'll point out October 15th, that's that first resolution to establish the 6-month moratorium. Thereafter, another defining event was December 11th when our PHO, Brian Kazmarski, presented his public health and risk concerns to our governing committee. Another big defining event in our timeline is January 21st. Many of you were there. That was a stakeholder meeting to collect input from not only our local producers, but local officials, concerned citizens. That was really well attended. There was a survey instrument distributed and completed. February 20th, the moratorium was extended another 6 months, and it focused it on prohibiting large-scale swine facilities with 1,000 animal units or more. Actually, that piece is a huge land use policy that was part of that moratorium. Officially, that resolution 0320 effectively prohibits those large-scale livestock operations to be within the shoreline area. If you know about Polk County, a lot of glacial till, we have a lot of lakes. That represents almost 50% of our total area. So that particular event with that land use policy within that resolution was huge. Flip down, we ran into COVID, unfortunately, we're still within it. But March and May, we did the CAFO report. A lot of the conditional use conditions were crafted. June 10th, Health and Human Services provided input. The Environmental Services Committee proposed some additional amendments and really came up with 17 criteria or conditions, along with 3 definitions that make up the framework for the CUP. Thereafter, another defining event, maybe June 24th, when we had Wisconsin Counties Association's Dan Barr come and speak. We had the public hearing earlier this month on July 8th. And then last week, July 14th, the Health and Human Services Board provides very important response, in particular to their concerns regarding groundwater, what's some certain things that are happening at the state level. And this is important because coincidentally or ironically or strangely enough, tomorrow, our Environmental Services Committee will consider and better understand and hopefully respond to the Health and Human Services Board's input. So that's tomorrow at 9 a.m. The conversation continues. If I invite you, just turn the page. I thought it would be just a good idea just to show what other agencies do in regards to regulation. As you may or may not know, several agencies regulate industrial agricultural facilities, not only again to protect our residents, but also the environment, our air quality, our groundwater, our surface water, our quality of life. And one of those agencies include one of our departments, our very own Polk County Land and Water Resource Department. So they're in this table as well. And I broke it down through resource concerns. So if you see that, just go down that column, that left-handed column. So if there's a concern about air quality or odor control, well, you go over to the right there. There's the regulatory agency, and then you go more on to the right, and that's what empowers them, whether it's a NR code or rule, an administrative code or state statute. So that's what defines their oversight and administrative powers. So anyway, we've outlined a lot of different resource concerns, whether it's development near water, setbacks, air quality, road access, runoff management, manure storage, and nutrient management. That one, if you note in the column with the ordinances, you'll see ordinance 3917, that's ours. And that is regards to manure storage, nutrient management, and water quality. And that's an ordinance that Land and Water administers. Pollution discharge, water quality, again, we're involved with that, with the permitting, stormwater erosion control. We're involved with that as well. High capacity wells, groundwater. Again, you can refer to the regulatory agency there. I just thought this would be helpful just to show you the other bodies of, or other agencies that do regulate these large scale operations. Some people have stated that all local ordinances, that local control, require DNR or DATCAP approval. You know, Wisconsin law does require their approval, local livestock regulation approval, only when our local regulations exceed or enact more restrictive standards than what the state performance standards are. So I want to make that clear. And in particular with DNR and DATCAP, you know, they're really focused on water quality. So that's their wheelhouse, and that's what they're going to focus on. Any additional ancillary rules or conditions that we apply, we administer. And liability or no liability, that's a policy and question. So again, just I'll wrap this up and share the podium here with Jason. Right now, Polk County has one ordinance 3917, the Nutrient Management, Manure Storage, Water Quality Ordinance. Again, the CUP is another level, another layer of conditions the developer has to meet in order to, in Ag District 20, by the way, in order to move forward. And also there's that permitting process at the state level. So I just want to point that out. And so again, going back to my opening statement, this is just another layer of control, local decision making. And that's what the work that the Environmental Services Committee has done up to date. With that said, I want to turn it over to Jason. He predates me, so he can talk about, you know, why our governing committee chose the CUP route. And then he also can talk about some other options for regulation. And lastly, I think it'd be helpful and healthy just for you to hear, again, the conditions that our governing committee has drafted. And with that said, again, just one thing. I don't know if you guys know this, but personally, I would not trade our ZA, our zoning administrator, for any zoning administrator in the state. I'm not kidding you. This guy, he's a machine. And the only way we trade him is if we could clone him, and then we just trade the clone.
Wow. Thanks, Bob, for that intro.
Time to ask for a raise, Jason.
So backing up in that July 8th, when we had the public hearing, we received a lot of virtual videos, and that people actually spoke before the Environmental Services Committee, and we're around 145 written comments. And unlike a lot of our public hearings that we get, a lot of these comments are much the same, you know, and then basically people just keep on signing them. These comments were very different. And so we put that information out on the website along with the proposed conditions have been on the website as well. We're trying to be very transparent in that through this process. However, during the public hearing, just reading some of the comments, and that it became very kind of clear to me that a lot of people may not understand where Polk County is today and the processes and that have been looked at in order to come up with these proposed conditions or even to elect the CUP process. So that's where I'm kind of going to back up to. A lot of the public comment that we received in that it made it seem like there was no regulation and that right now at the county. And what I mean no regulation is that the CAFOs would automatically be prohibited and that from Polk County, which is not the case at all, because the swine CAFOs right now, there would be no permitting process for it. So these proposed laws and that, or if the county was to choose another ordinance to enforce, would be acting, you know, more regulation on the large-scale livestock facilities. So going back to when we first started looking at this, as Bob mentioned, in that there was a potential applicant, and that where there's still a pending application in Burnett County for a large-scale swine facility. That facilitated the beginning of the discussions before the Environmental Services Committee. They directed us as staff to come out and, you know, give them options on how to take and regulate a large-scale livestock facility like this. And basically, there's three of them. There's the zoning conditional use process, which the committee has elected to pursue. And there's a lot of pros to the CUP process. The first thing is that it involves public involvement, and that, or the public is involved, and they're not involved on the back end when there's an issue. They're involved up front, and that so they're able to take and hear the concerns and that of the public, and then when they would be the committee to help them make their decisions. And they're also able to require additional information and additional studies from the applicant. So if we have a property in the town of Sterling where we have a lot less residential population, we don't have as much water resources, we have really good sandy soils, an application for a large-scale livestock facility up there may be different than one that is located next to one of our cities or villages where we have a lot more population. We maybe have heavy soils that are going to produce, you know, more runoff. We maybe have very, you know, irregular land or maybe very steep hills, and that where there might not even be a lot of farmland to spread the waste. So the conditions for those two applications may vary, and the ability to do a CUP process will allow the county committee, and that as elected bodies, and that to be able to take and evaluate those applications, require that extra information in the proposed text, and that the applicant would be responsible for burden or for all the cost of those extra studies or reports and that the committee request. And then going forward, and that they would take and issue a CUP, and that with conditions. And when we're looking at doing the CUP conditions, they're looking at protecting public health, safety, and water quality of Polk County. Those are just a few. Our ordinance actually provides 12 different criteria that the committee would look at the application to make sure that they meet for all CUPs. One of the huge cons to the CUP process is very similar to just having county zoning in general, because right now we have 3 towns that are underneath town zoning. We have 5 towns that are under, or that are unzoned or have no zoning, and the rest of the towns are under county zoning. So in other words, 1/3 doesn't have county zoning and 2/3 does. The towns that do not have county zoning, the CUP process will not apply in. So the areas outside of the shoreland area, they basically have no land use regulation for large-scale livestock, besides the DNR and DATCAP permitting processes that they've already got to go through. Those local towns, though, do have the option to adopt their own ordinances or adopt into county zoning at any time. So it's kind of very similar to other, you know, land uses that might be controversial in those areas. And that where they do have their own ways to regulate it, or they could also create their own zoning ordinance. One of the big things in that with the conditional use process is the county is not required to cost share any dollars for the manure lagoons or stormwater plan. So there's no cost sharing dollars that are required to take and serve these large scale facilities. However, if the county does a livestock siting ordinance, they do have to take and provide cost-sharing dollars for special requirements, and that to these large-scale livestock producers. One of the benefits of a livestock siting law is that it applies everywhere in Polk County. However, it is also greatly regulated by the state, and the amount of local control with a siting ordinance is not going to be as much as what you would with a CUP process, just because the rules that you create or the ordinance that you create would have to directly mimic the administrative code of DATCAP. And DATCAP would also review that ordinance to make sure that the ordinance complies. So some of the conditions in that are proposed right now, and that we could not put in a citing ordinance. And that the good thing about it, though, is that it does promote, responsible growth and viable and that agricultural means in that within the county. So it still keeps kind of equal standards across the state, and it doesn't make us unique. It's timely in that to administer, though, because again, you're constantly checking to make sure that you're in compliance with state law and administrative code. There's follow-up site visits. There's some things that might be a little bit harder to measure, like odor and stuff like that in the citing laws. I'm not saying that we can't do that in the CUP side of things, but if you take and enact an ordinance underneath 51, you pretty much got to follow those standards. There's no public involvement in a citing law ordinance. Basically, and that's somebody that has a large-scale swine facility and they want to bring it to one of our towns, they would just work with staff, and staff would work them through the ordinance and then say, okay, here's the requirements you got to meet. And if they meet the requirements, the permit could be issued. And before anybody in the area around that property even knows, and that the barn could be started to be built. There is also a livestock siting review board. It's through DATCAP. And so if an applicant comes through and let's say the county denies them, DATCAP does have a review board that can also step in, and they're kind of like the appeal board, and they're going to take and make sure that the county's following the citing laws. So again, in that, it's a good option. It's a good way to regulate, but it's just not as much local control. Doesn't give the public involvement up front. So, and the third option is an option that is based more off from the general powers of the county and the ability to just regulate public health hazards within the county. And it's basically an operation-based ordinance. And that Bayfield County has an ordinance like this. Up in Bayfield County, they've got a very extensive list of conditions that the applicant has to meet. Basically, I would consider it similar to the CUP process, only much more restrictive, and limits the applicant, a lot more before they can even come to the board. In the past, our previous administrator Osborne had heard that that ordinance may not be lawful, and so at that time, the committee, kind of ruled out that ordinance because, and that we were thinking it was unlawful, and it was very similar to the other CUP ordinance conditions anyway. But it does have a lot of flexibility, but the county would be possibly taking on more liability by going underneath that ordinance. So that brings me to the CUP conditions. As it's proposed, the proposed amendments that the committee has been looking at is for putting swine concentrated animal feeding operations. You can see that's one of the terms that we define there. In as a conditional use underneath one of our zoning districts. It's the agricultural 20 zoning classification. The nice thing about having this conditional use and that, like the swine CAFO, and that only in one zoning district, is it's going to involve our towns. Most of the county in that is not zoned Ag 20 currently. And so the first step, if we were to have a large scale operation come in to apply, and that we would direct them to the town. And if the town says no, and that we don't want to rezone your property to Ag 20, and that it stops there. They can't even come to the county. So the town's got a lot of authority in that underneath the CUP process. If they say, yeah, we're okay with that, and that it still comes through the county to get approved as a rezone. And then after that, they still have to reapply and do a public hearing for the CUP process, only if they meet the criteria that the committee decides and the county board approves in the ordinance. We had two other terms there, animal lot and animal unit. Those terms came directly from the statutes and administrative code. When we're talking animal unit, an animal unit is 1,000 pounds of animal. And currently, and that the county has, and that you would be a swine CAFO if you had over 1,000 animal units. And a one pig is considered 0.4 animal units. So that's roughly 2,500 pigs or more. And with that, I'm just going to run down through the conditions. There's 17 of them. The first one is that the applicant shall have a nutrient management plan that meets the 590 nutrient management practice standard for all the lands in total farming operation and must ensure that land base is sufficient to handle the waste produced annually. We're already doing that. That's actually a requirement from the DNR as well. What this is really for is to provide a condition that if they don't do that with the DNR or with land and water, that we can also revoke their permit. So a lot of these conditions are already required through other permitting processes, but by putting it into the zoning, it's just one more avenue for enforcement. Farm entrance shall be at least 100 feet from a non-farm residential driveway. The operation shall comply with all other state, federal, and other local regulations pertaining to livestock facilities. That's one that we commonly have in all of our CUP permits, just to take and allow that local control if a town has an ordinance or if the state or if the DNR, DATCAP, whoever it might be, and that then we can work together with them. Shall obtain approval and that from the town prior to hauling of any overweight loads during spring period. That was some comments that we received during the town meetings in January, and that was just some of the towns were concerned about their public improvements. Shall have no discharge from animal lots, high moisture feed storage, or waste storage in waters or mapped wetlands. All waste storage structures, including manure storage, shall be at least 200 feet from the nearest property line. That setback, and that these are a minimum setback, being a CUP process, and that the committee could require more or greater setbacks, but they would have to be at least 200 feet. Underneath the livestock siting, the maximum would be 300 feet ever, period. All livestock on premise shall be counted towards the total animal units. All buildings, housing, livestock, and feed storage with 1,000 animal units or more shall have a minimum setback of 200 feet. The applicant shall provide a 24-hour contact number for the DNR and owner-operator in case of a spill. Shall notify the town chairperson, county land and water resources, land information department, public health department, and DNR within 24 hours of a spill. Upon receiving that spill, and that the county shall publish a notice in the official county newspaper for 1 week and provide a notice on the county website. And that there was some public comment received about the St. Croix County spill and the lack of notice in that for that. And so that's one unique condition that the county can put in underneath the CUP. Shall have a mortality management plan for any deceased animals on site. Polk County Land Information, Land and Water, town chairperson shall receive a copy of all current DNR and DATCAP permits, violations, and nutrient management plans annually. That again is just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're all able to keep track of these facilities and make sure that they're current on all their permits. Applicant shall disclose any previous livestock facility violations. So basically the concern is some of these outside organizations, how do we know if they've been past violators? And that might be relevant in that during the CUP hearing. Shall comply with the Polk County Manure and Water Quality Management Ordinance. Again, they got to do that already, but this is just another requirement that we can do. Any suspected case of an environmental or human health hazard shall be referred to the Polk County Health Department, and the appropriate follow-up will occur based on public health statutory requirements. We received this guidance and that from our health department. It's kind of a general, term or general condition, but they have their own health hazard ordinance, so that they're able to take and just follow up on it, just like any other complaint that they may receive. The farm owner and operator must live within 5 miles of the farm to be more responsive for spills. And professionally designed and drafted plans of the facility shall be submitted with the conditional use permit application. So that would be engineering plans for stormwater and erosion control, maybe some other studies that they have, just so that we're getting, professionally designed and from professional people in the trades. So that's kind of where they're at right now after months of talking about this, receiving lots of public input. The committee and that we'll be talking about it tomorrow, like Bob said. If the county adopts a CUP process like this, it doesn't mean that it's the last and only thing that the county can do. The county could still explore other options like a siting ordinance or like the operational ordinance as well. But there's a lot of pros in that, from our opinion as staff, in that to doing the CUP process. Maybe some of those conditions got to be reworked. Maybe we want to add conditions. So we'd encourage you in that if you had any ideas, and that to think about those, but make sure that those conditions are relating back to the public health and safety of the land in Polk County and also the people in Polk County. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Bob. Okay, is everyone good to keep going?
Mr. Chair, I have one clarification.
Sure, John.
Where it says new and expanding.
You got a mic?
Current.
I can hear you, but no one else.
I know. I believe currently, Polk County has 5 registered CAFO, that's over 1,000 units, 4 dairy and 1 poultry.
We're not gonna talk about anything in people. We can do that at committees. Thank you. Where are we at? We got the 14 presentations. We got Brian from, and I'm gonna let Vince, you wanna take this over and.
Yeah, real briefly here, I'll just introduce Brian Della, who is with PMA, and Brian is our finance expert consultant, and we asked Brian to come speak to us about our strategy on bonding and financing significant projects going forward. This was a process that was started several years ago, 7 years ago, I think, under Dana Fry and Andrea, and it worked out really well. It gives us a chance to basically borrow funds or bond funds so that we can spend it and plan for capital expenditures going forward. Brian obviously will do a much better job at explaining this than me. So Brian, thank you for coming.
General Government Committee. The presentation briefly looks at your.
You want us to wait, Chad?
Oh.
Oh, we need a green light.
Oh, okay, well. So as I said into a dead microphone, I gave this presentation to the General Government Committee on July 9th, and now we're doing it for the whole board. It just briefly looks at your existing debt, some of the procedures for issuing new debt, and includes a debt service projection based on some of the new numbers, some of the initial rough numbers that are from the architects relating to the facilities update. Before we had these kind of numbers, it wouldn't make much sense to make projections because we didn't have a good idea of, essentially what we should be using for debt. So with that, we'll just start clicking away. First slide looks at your bonding history. So the county has issued debt 7 times since 2000. And the only outstanding piece of debt is the 2017 general obligation promissory notes. So, so here's the list of the 7 issues and the purposes there in the column. So in 2001, 2002, new Justice Center, new Adult Development Center, and renovation of a Human Services and Public Health Office building. The county had also borrowed for your unfunded pension liability, which all units of local government had back in around 2003 when the WRS levied that. There was a new communication system in 2005. The arrows represent some refinancing, so debt might be issued for 20 years and it's callable at year 10, so those last 10 maturities get refinanced at lower rates, which we've enjoyed for the last 30, 40 years, a general trend downward. And the 2017 issue was a refinancing of the last little bit of the last few maturities of that Justice Center back from 2001, and new money for the highway facility. So with that little summary of your existing debt, we'll just kind of go through a few slides on the sort of debt issuance process. Common in this slide's common funding options. So when people say bonding, they generally mean a capital markets debt issue, and most of your debt issues since 2001 were all bond, what we consider bonding. You were sold securities. But the 2017 issue, that was actually a private placement or a direct placement with a bank. Markets change, banks' appetite for debt changes. Sometimes they compete very well with the capital markets, which usually have the lowest rates. But there's times when there's benefits in taking it directly to a bank. And it's still kind of a competitive process where we're taking bids on your debt and that type of stuff. But those are, how you've done it, and that's the most common ways to issue debt. Small amounts of debt for small projects, some little equipment, you go to a local bank, or there are times you could use the state trust fund loan program for certain reasons. But those are, what I would say are the 4 big ways to access capital to finance generally capital, but occasionally other things like your WRS deficiency. GO notes and bonds, just want to draw to your attention, the state statute defines GO notes as anything up to 10 years in length. Bonds are anything greater than 10 years, and they're generally limited to 20 years. GO notes are they're a little less restrictive, and there's no rules on how they're sold. In other words, you could negotiate directly with someone, or you could do a formal competitive sale. And as a financial advisor, I forgot that's really what we do. I'm a financial advisor, so we would conduct generally we never buy your debt and resell it. We act as an independent advisor to the county with fiduciary duty to the county. So when I say competitive sale, what I mean is we put your debt issue out in the different kind of banks bid on it. So state statute requires general obligation bonds, the longer ones, to be bid out. You're not allowed to essentially even go to a local bank for that, unless they happen to win a competitive sale. Resolutions on the next slide. This, as I mentioned, the general obligation bonds are a little more restrictive. So these are the resolutions that are generally required for a bond issue. Notes could perhaps be a little bit, maybe 2 could fit into 1 type of thing. But oftentimes, what we start off on a big project is have a project resolution. So that's an informal resolution that just gets the board members on record to saying that they want to move forward with the projects. Yes, engage the engineers. Yes, engage the architects. Yes, engage the financial advisors. Spend money on preparing a larger project to go forward. It's particularly beneficial because, as you see in the initial authorizing resolution, that requires a 3/4 vote of the members elect. So, for a 15-person board, that means you'd have to have 12 affirmative votes to issue debt to finance a project. So that's why if the project resolution doesn't get 12 votes in Polk County, you might want to really reconsider moving forward, because you probably wouldn't be authorizing the debt. So the initial authorizing resolution authorizes the debt. It generally doesn't authorize the sale. So, and especially in a larger project, let's say you wanted to not borrow it all at once. Let's say it was a $10 million, you want to borrow $5 million one year, $5 million the next. That's where the set sale resolution comes in. So you might authorize $10 million one day, and then 6 months later authorize a $5 million sale through a set sale, and then come back maybe a year later and authorize another $5 million, never exceeding the 10, but just the mechanism to sell. That's the set sale. An award, what's the award resolution? When we get the final rates and we find out who your purchaser is, how much you're going to pay, what your interest rate's going to be, and your debt service payments, there'll be a final award, a final resolution called the award resolution, where you award it to the bank. So kind of a good cheat sheet for those who want to know. If you don't want to know, that's okay. That's what the professionals will bring these to your attention. A reimbursement resolution. This is important if the county wants to start spending money on a project before it gets the proceeds from the bond issue, or before it passes the initial resolution. Let's say the county, spending money on an architect. Maybe they would like to be reimbursed out of the general fund, and maybe the county wants to be reimbursed for those expenses out of the bond, out of bond proceeds. So if you'd like to do that, there's just a special resolution called a reimbursement resolution. So let's just say any money spent on these, architects or consultants can be repaid. It doesn't have to permanently come out of the general fund. It would just be temporarily advanced from the general fund, and then the general fund gets reimbursed with bond proceeds. And I just have a little note. It's usually a good idea not to ever have that reimbursement cross December 31st, because you'll like your audit to look great. For the rating agencies, which is my next slide. Remember, I said on your debt issues from 2001 through 2012, they were all regular capital market debt issues. If you were to go and issue debt in the capital markets today, you would almost certainly get a rating. Why? Well, in 2016, you were last rated, and you were rated at a AA3. And the way a rating works is that, the county would ask the rating agency for a rating. The county would pay the rating agency, but the idea is that you would get lower rates in the capital markets on a debt issue if you're rated. So the two major rating agencies are Moody's and S&P, which many of you probably heard of. And you're in that AA category now, albeit it's a little lower end of the AA category, but AA rating is very good. And whatever you paid for that rating, which is paid for with bond proceeds, but whatever you paid for that rating, you'd certainly get you would certainly save more money with a lower interest rate. So if you go to capital markets, certainly get a rating, and the economics would work in your favor. So a little more detail on the page, but I'm under the impression you have a copy of this emailed to you. So this is just the last two slides. This is the part of the projection. Now, hypothetical, we don't know, but this is, usually I found it to be most effective if we put something forward, then people can make suggestions and make edits to it. But if there's nothing to make edits to, then it's tough to get a handle on things. So the plan of finance, which is really on the following slide, is sort of based on what you see on slide 8. We want to follow the plan that the previous administration had put into place, and the idea was essentially, since you don't have any real big building projects, that you should always be issuing debt that doesn't extend beyond 10 years, and you can just issue GO notes. And that the county doesn't want to, if at all possible, doesn't want to have the debt service levy grow from the existing 2.8 million. So right now in 2020, you levied at the end of 2019 2.8 million to pay for debt service. And so the idea is that we should do everything we can to have that not exceed $2.8 million going forward. It certainly can, and this is one part of levy limit regulations that, just to digress a little bit, the levy is really split into two pieces. and especially for a new supervisor. It's the amount you levy for debt service. Okay, that's unlimited, but you have to authorize the debt. But the debt service payment is not limited. And right now it's at $2.8 million. Everything else, it will call operating levy. And that is limited to just your net new construction, which call it less than 1% for most counties. It's 0.75%. So that's growing at a minuscule amount. That's the max. So what counties are generally doing is things they used to fund with cash, equipment and, certain capital projects, they kind of tend to keep borrowing for those because the debt service can go on the levy. So 10-year debt, keep the total county debt service at 2.8 million, and that's our criteria. And we got some contemplated projects. In 2021, we have $6 million, and that's what the architects are going to kind of talk about this tonight, or not kind of, they will talk about this tonight. These numbers don't match exactly, but they're in the ballpark. $6 million for phase 1 government center facilities update. And then, okay, that's next year. The following year, $2 million for the phase 2 of the government center facilities update, including IT improvements. Okay, so that's $8 million for the facilities. And then I modeled how much could you really reasonably borrow every year and not increase this $2.8 million aggregate debt service amount. And what I did is I just the way I think about these things is that I was trying to figure out what a steady state number. So what if you were doing 10-year notes and every a 10-year issue with 10 payments of $280,000? You could see over time you'd always be at 2.8 million, right? Because you'd have 10 $280,000 payments, and then one would fall off. You'd put a new one on, and in forever you would just be at the $2.8 million. So I use that as a sort of a sustainable borrowing rate, and sort of double checked it against your existing debt, and checked to make sure it worked, and it did work. And that's what the following slide's going to show. Now it's really hard to see. I had two versions of this. One had it says with attachments, the name of the slide. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Sorry, I said next slide, I guess. The disclaimer side, which I'll spare you from reading. What we have here, and it's really hard to see, but the graph, it's color-coded, and there is a graph at the bottom. And what you see here in the green is just the payments you have left from your 2017 issue. So I don't know if you can kind of tell, but there's a little, this is, the red line's 2.8 million, okay, so it drifts down. And then right here, this green, that's your existing debt. So you can see right now you're at 2.8 million, and then it about the same for 21, and then it drops significantly. And it's only, whatever that number is, 246, So the new debt, this peach color, those are all these other debt issues, and I've shown the amortization in there in detail, but that's the $6 million in next year, the $2 million thereafter, and then in the following year, and then about $2.4 million. And I don't think I said that before, but a $280,000 payment is about borrowing $2.4 million at 3% for 10 years. So the real big takeaway here is that you're paying $2.8 million right now in debt service. If you want to continue paying $2.8 million, you can borrow $8 million over the next 2 years for the facilities, no problem. Then you can borrow $2.4 million a year every year thereafter, and you will still be under the $2.8 million. And in fact, there is just a little bit of, and you see those graphs, some of those graphs are below the red line. So there's a little bit of even additional cushion if you needed to borrow a little extra from, from time to time. So, and obviously you don't have to borrow exactly 2.4 million every single year. It's just a number. It could be 4.8 million one year, maybe nothing the next, and then you could start borrowing again. We can create very customized amortization schedules or repayment schedules. So we'll make this work, and the idea is that you don't have to follow it exactly, but we've shown, but you should just maybe keep in mind that if 8 million for projects on the new building, 2.4 million a year for anything you want after that, and you don't have to raise the debt service levy beyond the current amount. And in fact, your mill rate will tick lower if you keep it at 2.8 million because there'll be some new growth. So at least on the debt service side of your levy, it will tick lower because the equalized value grow a little bit due to just inflation or new buildings, new value, and so your rate will tick lower over time if you keep the dollars at 2.8 million. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Brian.
All right, I'll leave this on so you guys don't have to talk into a dead mic.
Does anyone need to take a quick break? Are you good? You want to take a break? Should we take a 10-minute break and we'll resume here at 25 after?
Maybe.
5 minutes, fine? Okay, 20 after.
Yes. Oh, sure. I hope it's not to show us all the blueprints problem. No, you mean, just to introduce Joel here and Melissa from World Architects. We're doing the facility need and safety analysis of the government center. You got the report emailed to you last week, the full report in the presentation where they did their due diligence with the peers and the staff, looking at the facility mechanicals, and also looking at the workflow and how we could better serve our customers. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joel and Melissa. Thanks for having us here. That's run along and talk. Quick agenda, we're studying objectives. Melissa will review the facility conditions that our team found. I'll review the space needs, and then we'll sum up with the recommendation that we're making. Two, I just think it's important that before I start a presentation, to let you know what I'm going to tell you before I tell you it. So we're going to talk about addressing infrastructure needs as soon as possible, creating a master plan of the space needs. There you go. Right there. We think that the county ought to consider creating a master plan for space needs, and then implement high-impact customer service and staff efficiency strategies, and then finally leave the old jail for now, or as is for now. We start every project with a conversation with key staff and leaders in our client organizations, understanding what the guiding principles are. What are the objectives we're trying to achieve with this study? You can see here that the number one priority, example 57, was investments should be fiscally responsible and reflect the county values. Number two, enhance customer service experience by becoming citizen-centered. Number three, capture divisional efficiencies to improve functional flow and productivity, upgrade safety and security around and throughout the building, plan for a user-friendly working, gathering, and meeting space that incorporates upgraded technology, improve productivity, recruitment, retention, and customer service through infrastructure operational efficiencies, and consider the long-term operational and space needs of the county. And these aren't things that we came up with. These are concepts and principles that division heads and managers came up with to guide our study of the facilities. With that, I'll turn it over to Melissa to go over the efficiency assessment.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting us present to you today. Our condition assessment, basically what we do is we come up here with a team of our engineers, mechanical, technology, electrical, and we look at the infrastructure of your existing buildings right now. So we're not looking at space constraints, we're not really looking at the functional space, we're really looking at the bones of the building and what maybe needs to be replacement, what maybe is in great condition that you guys have maintained, And then we really start looking at a couple of different categories. Like I said, mechanical, electrical technology, big one. We do look at, oh, sorry.
Yeah, hold it steady right there if you would. Yeah.
We do look at ADA compliancy, making sure that we're maintaining that. We look at any life safety issues that we might see are deficient currently in your facilities as well.
So with that, if you go forward to, thank you. The general systems really incorporates all of the architectural and structural components that we looked at. I'm not going to go through the entire list, but the big ones really are the ADA. We believe that that's probably our most important pieces here. So that would be upgrading your toilets. Most of your doors right now, when you look at just kind of the wood door that you have, they don't meet the ADA clearances for them. And so as we think of your public facility, that would be one piece that we would want to modify, along with your railings and your stairwells. Just as, again, as we look at the public interactions of the facilities, those would be the main things that we would look at. The other things that we did look at would be your existing windows. We do know on the 1974 version or side of the building over here, they are original. We did look at them. That was in part of our report that they were original. However, looking at them in the existing structure and the existing building, we didn't think that it was really a great payback when you look at the building exterior wall is at the same level of an R value as the windows are right now. They're all in that same vintage. So the buyback, when we look at it, didn't really make sense when we reviewed that with the county here. And then the roof. So we did look at all the roofs as well. We did notice some issues with the roof as it was peeling and deteriorating, and so we would recommend the replacement of that as well. If you go forward one, please. Thank you. Mechanical systems. So there's a pretty big divide between your 2004 building and the 1974 building. We believe that the original 1974 building has a lot of its original systems in it. It is, or they're nearing or surpassing their useful life expectancy of them. And so there is a recommendation to kind of replace a majority of the mechanical systems on this portion of the building. And like I said, we do believe that the 2004 facility, yes, maybe in 10, 15 years, we might want to look at the life expectancy of those systems, but at this current state, we believe that those are in adequate shape to keep the county going. One. Thank you. And then electrical systems. We did look at all of your electrical systems. What we observed was that the distribution equipment that you have is past its life expectancy, and that as your systems are aging, and so as we think of any huge infrastructure changes, changing of cabling, what have you, your existing systems wouldn't be able to keep up without a significant replacement to those as well. And then one of the things that we do look at is sustainability, and so kind of upgrading all of the lights from the T8s to an LED fixture throughout the facility as well. And the last piece that we did take a look at was technology, and so one of the recommendations is providing adequate grounding for your AV rooms, and so where your fiber is coming into the building, it's not grounded adequately, so there's some risk there for the county. And then kind of replacing all of your old cabling systems that you have through the building and kind of recabling the whole thing.
Okay, so then while our team's going through and doing the facility analysis, another portion of our team surveys and then interviews all of the departments in the building. And we were again focused just on this campus. We validate the surveys, survey responses, do walkthroughs and tours of the space to understand how it's being utilized, where there are vacancies, and prompt a lot of thought about how operations could change. We work with a lot of and have seen a lot of different ways of doing business. And so we'll prompt, well, why do you do it this way? And are there other opportunities to be more and learn what's viable and what's not? If you can go to the next slide. In the report, there's a detailed room-by-room takeoff of the building, of how every room is used, what size square footage it is, what deficiencies there might be in sizes or where rooms don't exist. This on screen is just a summary of, we broke it down into 4 different groups. The departments in the general government division, the Environmental Services Division, and kind of looked at those as suites of space. And for the most part, some are up a little bit, some are down a little bit. If you go to the next slide, what's really amazing and a great position to be in as a county is that the end result, the usable area, when you add up all of the department suites, you get to within 200 and some square feet of each other. Of the left column is what you have existing, and the right column is what we believe, in our professional opinion, the size of the building should be to accommodate the needs that we identified during our surveys and interviews and walkthroughs. And usually it's off by thousands of square feet. That gives us great confidence that this building, the 2004 and 1974 building, is right-sized for the county operations that are here on site. It also tells us that there's not much need right now for using the jail other than the storage that you're using it for right now. There was thought at the beginning that maybe some departments could move over into the old jail, but really these two buildings are sufficient. The government center side is sufficient to handle the space that is needed. So that's a great position. We're not saying you need to do an addition. We're not saying you need to remodel the jail or anything like that. What you have here is sufficient. But we did note from some of our interviews that there are some inefficiencies, both on the staff side, but more importantly from the customer side, on where departments are located. So we are suggesting that there's some internal moves that might happen that would provide better customer service and better staff efficiency. So if you go to the next slide, summarize that in a brief chart here that's each column is a different level of the building, lower level, main level, upper level. And there's really just a few minor moves. In the general government division, really moving the CJCC group to the main level to be closer to community services, who they coordinate with a lot, is a suggestion. So that's, a couple offices, very minor space move. We're suggesting moving the county clerk up to the upper level. That is to be part of the broader general government division, and also primarily actually just to clear space out on this main level. And the reason for that, along with, you can see down under the green in the community services division, suggesting moving behavioral health down to the lower level where there's quite a bit of vacancy from the old lobby and some other spaces that are available. The reason for those two moves off of the main level is that the ADRC and the vet services have clientele who are most likely to have mobility issues. And with the move to, for safety and for public health to have all people come in the south entry, now all of a sudden it's quite a bit into the building and down a level for those potentially mobility impaired people to get to those critical services. So clearing out some space on the main level where they can come in the front door and be much closer to receiving those services, and also possibly closer to collaboration with the central one-stop shop check-in for community services that's been established on the main level, we really think would establish better customer service and maybe even save some staffing. The other piece that also helps with both the general government and administration of the county, as well as taking advantage of some vacant space, is moving the boardroom up to the upper level as well. Trying to take advantage of collaboration among the administration and the different meetings, and use some of the vacant space in those large meeting rooms, the former courtrooms that are still up there. And again, that also byproduct creates more additional space for customer service oriented lines of business closer to that front door. So next we'll jump to our recommendation. We know that really the primary focus of the facilities right now, as I said in the intro, is the maintenance. And between the buildings on campus, the suggestion really is to focus on this 1974 building, the southern half, three-level portion of the government center. You can see all the different systems that are laid out, all the different improvements we're recommending that are focused on the 1974 building. Some of the others are building-wide, the building automation system, that's temperature control, water softeners, water heaters, fire alarm. Those cover the 74 building and the 2004 edition. And the total of all of those systems, replacement total project cost, when we estimate it, gets to about $5.9 million. It is 45 plus years old, the facility. It's in great shape. Other than a lot of the infrastructure, these parts all move. They all have electricity flowing through them, and they're all subject to being worn out. And many of, as Melissa mentioned, many of these systems are past their useful life and should be addressed so there's not a catastrophic failure coming up soon. The other portion of our recommendation is really, on the next slide, is looking at making some customer service and staff efficiency moves, and those are some of those internal department moves. We don't have a perfect plan laid out. We have some concepts of how it could be accommodated by those suggestions of some of those departments moving. But we believe that we totaled up the square footage that might be needed to be remodeled and put an appropriate cost to that, and came up with about a $2 million project cost for some of those, not just moving, but making sure that people move into space that's allows them to be their most efficient and have best customer service. And that's totaling up the facility improvements, the maintenance, and those staff efficiency recommendations totals the $7.9 million recommendation. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. And I will say too, they worked diligently with our staff and throughout the building. And as you can imagine, we've been working with them now for several months, refining, slashing, cutting things out. So we're really focusing on what are the essential things that need to be done now. Okay.
All right. We have presentation of the Star Trail Master Plan by Tool Design. Ben, you want to start us off?
My name is Ben Elfelt. I'm the coordinator. Tonight, I'm Murphy Lopez from Tool Master Plan for the Tower 7 Lakes Trail. Done.
Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Pritchard?
Yes. Yes.
Well, you asked.
Oh, I didn't know I did. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I couldn't hear for a minute there, but anyway.
Joe, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to mention about the mic.
Okay, he's got the mic, Joe. Thanks for being on top of that.
I'm on the mic now. Thank you. I'll go over that real briefly again. My name is Ben Elfelt. I'm the Polk County Parks and Trails Coordinator. I'm going to be introducing Sean Murphy Lopez. He's from Tool Design. He's the consultant that we hired to come up and work with the Tower 7 Lakes Trail Master Plan. So Sean's going to give a presentation. I'm going to follow that up with some community engagement and next steps. So. About the microphone, Sean.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Ben, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Just let me know if I'm not doing any of this right, since I wasn't in the room before, so I'm not quite sure how things were done. Mr. Chair, about how long would you like my presentation to go? Ideally.
I'd do it as quick as possible.
All right. 5 to 10 minutes?
Whatever you need to take.
Okay.
Yeah, do it thorough. And
then how do I advance the slides, or do I just ask you to do it? Okay, thank you. So just a little history of why we wanted to work in Polk County. We wanted to be in a rural area of Wisconsin. Is it okay if I step over here? Okay, thank you. We were motivated by these access challenges that you guys had with multiple users wanting to use the same trail. And we know you guys have a lot of interest in economic development here. The next slide. I worked on the project, and then my senior advisor on this project was Jeff Kabati. So it was the two of us at Tool Design. Next slide. This was our schedule when Tool Design did the majority of our work was between October 2nd and February 12th when I was last here in Polk County at the Environmental Services Committee meeting. The table of contents for the draft plan, and this is on the county's website on the project page. Yep, run through, that's okay. We can keep going quick. Nope, keep going. That's fine. The major piece about history, which is in chapter 2, is that ATVs were withdrawn for consideration in 2019. And there was a lot of discussion and public engagement around that. And that had to do with federal funding requirements. Chapter 4 was community engagement. So we were here in October and we hosted a public meeting with county staff down in Amory. And we had a lot of folks come in, give us feedback there, and then also a lot of online feedback and then emails that were sent to county staff. And that drove the work that we did over the following months, coming up with alternatives for you guys to consider. The key findings were that there's, of course, a lot of interest in trails here. The public is very divided on the different possibilities of adding snowmobiles and equestrians, very similar to how they were with ATVs, as you all know. And then the concerns from non-motorized users were around safety, noise, a damaged trail surface, and displacement. And snowmobilers and equestrians were also concerned about safety, and more of their issues had to do with economic development, sharing, and network connectivity with the rest of the trail system. In Appendix B, one of the first things we did was we reviewed other documents that were already out there, published by the DNR here in Wisconsin. That included the statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan and the DNR's design standards for trails. We also looked at Minnesota DNR's design standards, since that's close by. And then finally, the equestrian side of things, we looked at a design guidebook that the U.S. Forest Service has. So what we found in that research was that biking and walking are the primary activities in demand in Northwest Wisconsin. This was through a survey that was done by thousands of people through the DNR, through that statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. They also have done some research and published guidance on which users are discouraged by which other users. So equestrians are discouraged by the presence of bicyclists, they found. And then cross-country skiers and fat tire bikers are discouraged by the presence of snowmobilers. And conversely, snowmobilers are discouraged by the presence of cross-country skiers and fat tire bikers. Also, the very bottom point here, per user, snowmobilers spend more than other user types. There was an economic impact study that the DNR also did. And if we go to the next slide, we'll show that. Of the 4 main uses, snowmobilers were found through this particular study to spend almost $200 per day, and horseback riders, cross-country skiers, and bicyclers were all below $100 per day. And again, we heard a lot about economic development from the public, so we went and we looked at whatever data was out there so we could see what's been published. The main thrust of our focus, and I think what the DNR was really looking for in part, compared to the previous draft plan that the county published, was an alternatives analysis. So we went into great detail in Appendix C, and we looked at these different factors over on the left-hand side. So topographical features, tree locations, archaeological sites, connections to nearby trails, all sorts of things. And then county staff also went out, took sample measurements of the trail to find out what was the width from the outside of the shoulder to the outside of the shoulder on each side of the trail. And the average width was 15 feet. And if we go to the next slide, there was a minimum of 13 feet and a maximum of 17 feet. And it varies along the trail corridor. So we looked at 7 alternatives, 4 for snowmobiles and 3 for equestrians. And I will walk through each one of these in a little bit more detail. We also developed an evaluation matrix that compared each of the 7 alternatives based on 7 different factors that we developed with staff based on public comment that we thought would be important for the Board of Supervisors to consider. So things like cost, economic development impact, safety, tree removal, wetland impacts, user group displacement, and additional maintenance needs. I just read them all off. And then the green, that has to do with what a particular positive outcome would be. So the county, for example, under cost to implement, probably wants a low cost. Under safety for all trail users, you probably want high safety. So those are highlighted in green. So in the next slide, snowmobile alternative 1 was to not allow snowmobiles on any portion of the corridor. This is the status quo. This is obviously cheap to implement. Safety for all trail users was medium because of some of the issues with snowmobilers not being able to have a clear route between State Highway 46 and County Highway C, the 2.5 miles immediately to the west of Amory. The next alternative was number 2, do not allow snowmobiles on any portion of the corridor, but widen those shoulders on the existing snowmobile route between those 2 highways. This one had a particular advantage of being safe for all trail users compared to the other alternatives. It had a high advantage, but in the other categories, it really doesn't have many advantages. It costs a lot to implement. There are wetland impacts because we're talking about widening the shoulder out on one side of that route. And that impacts a lot of homeowners as well, and the trees that they have in their front yards or nearby. Next alternative, I should, that's okay, you can go forward to the next slide. So this is actually what it would look like. This is the current highway or roadway. And then over here, this is where you would have a snowmobile, a 2-way shoulder trail that would be 10 feet wide. And it would follow, on this map, B1 and C1, rather than B2 and C2, which is the Stour Trail. And this is the existing snowmobile route that snowmobilers use, where they often get lost and have to contend with car traffic. Next slide, snowmobile alternative number 3. This was allowing snowmobiles on the whole corridor with no changes to the existing trail surface width. This one has advantages that are highlighted in green. Where it doesn't have particular advantages is safety for all trail users and user group displacement, where this would displace skiers and bicyclists. Next slide, snowmobile alternative number 4. This was, you guys had discussed previously with ATVs, the possibility of creating this separate parallel trail within this corridor. And we looked at that in great detail, and that's what this alternative is about. We thought we should do due diligence with that idea that kept being brought up back in 2018. So here, this has no particular advantage except for user group displacement, where you're really keeping all these users in the trail corridor. Next slide goes into some more detail about this. How we envision this happening, conceptually at least, was that you'd have 2 types of scenarios. Up top, you would have a separate snowmobile trail. It would be a future one. And then this is the existing trail. And there would be a minimum 6-foot buffer in between. And then this is the option where you don't have steep slopes and a lot of wetland impacts. This option here is where you do have those wetland impacts and steep slopes. So a shared snowmobile and cross-country ski trail, where you would advise through signs and other educational measures that cross-country skiers should stay to one side of this trail as it stands today, and snowmobilers should stay to the other side. And then you have to do 2-way yielding, kind of like you do on really narrow residential streets in the winter. The next slide. We looked at where would it be separate and where would it be shared. And pretty much half of this segment that we've been discussing, that I've been discussing between those 2 highways would be separate, and half of it would be shared. Blue is separate, red is shared. And so on the next slide, this shows an example of, I believe, where these 2 instances would take place. Between the 2 lakes, you have to do shared here because of those steep drop-offs. there is no place to do anything down below. Down this lower picture, you can add a snowmobile trail, say off to the left or to the right, and that's where you have the tree impacts. So the next slide, we get into the equestrian alternatives. The first one is don't allow equestrians on any portion of the corridor. This has a lot of advantages except for economic development impact, where you don't have those additional equestrians coming to use the trail, and you also displace equestrians. Continue to displace them, I should say. Number two, allow equestrians on the whole corridor with no changes to the existing trail surface width. Here, let's see, your advantages are low cost, low tree removal, low wetland impacts. Safety is not such a great advantage. It's low compared to the other alternatives. And user group displacement is listed still as equestrians because the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan found that equestrians are deterred by bicyclists going by quickly. We found through the public engagement process, there's a lot of disagreement about that, but we're using the research that's out there to give you the answers. Next alternative is to allow equestrians on the corridor on separate parallel trails. So similar to that snowmobile alternative number 4, we looked into detail, what would it take to make that happen? So, and of course, it has a higher cost on the next slide. We developed 2 cross sections, very similar to the other scenario. A little bit of a difference was we always kept the equestrians separate from the bicyclists and the pedestrians. It all depended on the size of the buffer. So up here we have a separate scenario with a 6-foot buffer, and down below we have a separate scenario with a 2-foot buffer. And so the next slide shows photographic examples of this. This is in a trail in Minnesota west of the Twin Cities. This is that 6-foot. You can have that tree cover potentially to really be that blinder for horses, so they don't have to, the equestrians don't have to be worried about those bicyclists zipping by. But in narrow situations on this same trail, they just put them side by side and put a little bit of a buffer there. And this gets into the scenarios of where you would have to, in red, you would have to do side by side, in green, you could do separate. And then also there are steep slopes along the corridor, and those might present some challenges as well for instituting this particular idea. Next slide. This is showing what the average trail width is today of 15 feet, and to put them side by side, you'd need 18 feet minimum, so you would have to widen out the trail in a lot of instances. That's it for me. I'll hand it back off to Ben unless there are questions for me, and I can also wait for questions.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. I don't know if I can talk quite that fast. Go. Chad, can you please pull up the PowerPoint? Yep, that one. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to briefly talk about the community engagement process throughout the Stour master planning process. Look at that. So in 2018, there are 2 parts of this process. The first phase in 2018, and then the current phase, which would start in the fall of 2019. So in 2018, the county sent out a survey with a question that read, which trail type do you feel would have the greatest benefit for Polk County? And the 3 choices people had were multi-use motorized, multi-use non-motorized, and then just general multi-use. 41.4% of people selected the multi-use motorized option. 42.6% of people selected the multi-use non-motorized option. And 15.9% of people selected the just general multi-use. Following the survey, there was a public hearing, and in the public hearing, There were 55 verbal comments received. 36 of those were in support of keeping the trail as is. 19 were in support of changing the use. Along with the verbal comments, there were 230 written comments received. 197 of the written comments were in favor of keeping the trail as is, and 33 were in favor of a change to the use. So that's the 2018 process. In the fall of 2019, as Sean mentioned, we had an open house in Amory, and it really boiled down to two questions. Would you like the Stour Seven Lakes Trail to allow snowmobiling, and would you like the trail to allow equestrians? And in the snowmobiling question, 42% of the people said yes, 54% of the people said no, 3% said maybe, and 1% didn't answer. In the equestrians, would you like the Stour to allow horseback riding? 37% said yes, 43% said no, 14% said maybe, and 6% didn't answer. In February 2020, we put out a survey that was shared from the user groups that went out online. We had 5,496 responses to this survey. And similar deductions were made. Snowmobile alternatives, we asked people to select their preferred alternative. So we had SA1, SA2, 3, and 4. The snowmobile alternative with the most selections was snowmobile alternative 3. That's what the board will be considering tonight, with 1,459 selections. SA1, which is not allowing snowmobiles on any portion of the corridor, had 802. With the equestrian alternatives, EA2, which is the alternative that is being considered, had 2,250 selections, and EA1, which is not allowing equestrians on the corridor, had 1,593 selections. Following the survey, we took written comment prior to the Environmental Services Committee meeting. And the results of the written comment are a little bit different. And it was the same thing, which alternative do you prefer? And if people said, if they talked about multiple alternatives in their written comment, they would get recorded as talking about each one of those alternatives. So we didn't have to choose and make that determination for them. So in that scenario, snowmobile alternative 1, which is do not allow snowmobiles on any portion of the corridor, had 173 responses, and snowmobile alternative 3, which is allow snowmobiles on the corridor, had 48 responses. The equestrian alternatives, I can't see it there. Equestrian alternative 1, which is do not allow equestrians, Chad, do not allow equestrians on any portion of the trail, had 124 responses. And equestrian alternative 2, which is allow equestrians on the trail, had 29 responses. Important point to note, the results of the survey and the results of the written comment are different. They're actually opposite. When we combine them, the Survey Monkey results and the public comment, snowmobile alternative 3, allowing snowmobiles on the trail, has 1,500 votes or responses. Snowmobile alternative 1, which is not allowing snowmobiles on the trail, has 975. With the equestrians, similarly, equestrian alternative 2, which is allowing horses on the trail, has 2,279. And equestrian alternative 1, which is not allowing horses on the trail, has 1,717. That brings us up to the public hearing. For the public hearing, we gave the public 2 days to come in and record video comments for the Environmental Services Committee. We had 30 people come in and do that, and they were split right down the middle. 15 of them said keep the same trail uses, and 15 of them said change the trail uses. And written comments again, 120 written comments came in for the public hearing that said keep the trail the same, and 13 comments came in that said change the use on the trail. So after the public hearing, the Environmental Services Committee meeting, they reviewed all of those slides at the previous 2 meetings, and they sent forth snowmobile alternative 3, which is allowing snowmobiles on the entire corridor with no changes to the existing trail surface width, and equestrian alternative 2, which is allowing equestrians on the entire corridor with no changes to the existing trail surface width. The Environmental Services Committee recommended these options based on a few factors: enhanced economic development opportunities, providing consistent trail uses that are consistent with the other rail trails in the county, implementing the original intent of the trail, and then the high demand and interest in the added user groups, the new user groups, and increasing the trail opportunities for those folks. So before these alternatives can be allowed on the trail, there are a few necessary modifications to the trail. Fairly minor things, but things that have to happen to provide for safety. With the snowmobiles, we have to have a minimum trail width of 14 feet. We have it. We need a 12-foot cleared vertical ceiling with the trees, so that will have to be done. It's going to need to be cleared out 2 feet on either side of the trail. That will have to be done. We will need to place signage and regulations on the trail, directional signs, yielding, navigational signs. The snowmobile club will be responsible for that, as it will be a funded snowmobile trail at that point. And then update and enter into an MOU with the snowmobile club to maintain that section of trail. Now, the one important note here is the Friends of the Stour are the primary caretakers of the trail right now. So with any changes to the use on the trail, that could change the amount of support the Friends of the Stour gives and does, which would increase the demand on the county for maintaining the trail. The equestrian alternative, the necessary updates and modifications are pretty similar. It's the same width and height requirements, 14 feet wide, 12 feet high. Signing and regulations, that will, educational signs, trail etiquette for how to act around horses and just getting folks familiar with horses. And then initiating an MOU with the Northwest Equestrian Club and getting them on board to help with the seasonal maintenance and grooming of the trail. So that will need to happen. Optional future improvements of the trail. We heard some talk about parking lots. Increased parking would be a really great improvement. Watering stations for horses along the parking lots. Winter shelter for snowmobilers and cross-country skiers and walkers. And then maybe providing alternative cross-country skiing opportunities in the county. And keep in mind, these are future improvements that are optional. They're not required to get these uses on the trail. They're just things that we may want to look at down the road. So now we'll go ahead. I guess what we need tonight is a motion on the resolution 2020 to finalize the master plan. Once that's done, staff will make the adjustments to the plan, some minor tweaks, send it to the DNR. The DNR will review the plan. They could approve it. They could come back and say, yeah, you guys need to change a few things. At that time, we'll do it and send it back, and that'll kind of be it. That's it. Are there any questions? Oh.
Yes, you can. I will recognize you.
Sharon Kelly.
Supervisor Kelly.
Yes.
Tell you what, it's been a long night.
Do we have budget to pay for the changes that need to be made to the trail and the ongoing maintenance?
I'm a budget person.
So the question was, do we have the budget to make these changes? Yes and no is the answer. The Snowmobile Club will make the necessary changes to the trail to get it ready for snowmobiles. So at that point, it would be, excuse me, it would be a grant-funded snowmobile trail. So they will get money for maintenance, grooming, signage.
Widening?
Well, it won't need to be wide. It won't need to be widened.
Okay.
In one small spot, it goes under a guide wire, and we'll just probably have to go around the telephone pole. But there won't be any widening.
Okay.
And as far as equestrians, that is where the MOU with the Northwestern Equestrian Alliance will come in. Because right now, there isn't a lot of budget for doing that.
So at some point then we move forward, it goes to the DNR, and then at some point does it come back here and we determine, yes, we have the money to do it or we don't?
I think the question is the budget, you have to do your budget every year. So at the end of this year, we're going to have a budget.
Yep.
And you have to approve a budget. So for every mile these trails are users, state funds, basically Polk County, which funds the snowmobilers per mile. The state gives you money for the maintenance, yearly money for every mile of snowmobile trail you get. Can you tell her how many dollars that is per mile?
Sure. It's $300 a mile.
Okay.
For snowmobile maintenance.
Right. So the state funds the maintenance for snowmobiles. There's so much a mile for every user. Bicyclists, there's some money, right?
Very little.
Very little for bicyclists, but and then there's money for equestrian. Again, not a lot, but for equestrian uses, there's also money per mile. Is that correct, Aaron?
I don't know.
ATVs there is, but we're not allowing ATVs now on this trail.
Mm-hmm.
So they base it on that. So I guess Vince could talk more about the budget. But it's not a big money issue.
Okay.
So yeah, it is what it is. Supervisor Master.
Yeah, first doesn't that you guys go to DNR review and up to their recommendations.
You need a mag mic.
And then
I got it, Joe.
Use this. They come up with a recommendation. Like it says in the master plan. It would have to be addressed. The concerns that the plan would have to be addressed, and it could go on for a couple of years. Or a year, I don't know, but that's my guess with the DNR. Knowing the DNR, they don't move very quick. But am I correct? That would be correct. Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Middleton.
Ben, can you talk about, I think the other piece that we lose out of this is the 10,000 or so trail per year that Friends of the Stour bring in. I don't know how that piece, because them managing it, there is a budgetary benefit to the county on that. I did have another question, but I can tell.
So the Friends of the Stour, as mentioned, they right now are the primary caretakers of the trail. Most of the maintenance and grooming and work that is done on the trail is done with volunteer time and donated money. The little bit of money that they get, which is roughly $10,000 a year from the bike pass sales, is used up pretty quick. The Friends of the Stour, being the primary group in Amory in that area, they are the primary ones that sell the trail passes. They sell, they're a vendor, and there's a little bit of a kickback to the vendor, so the Friends make some money by selling the trail passes. And then the county retains some money from all the trail passes. The money that the county retains doesn't have to be spent on this trail or that trail. It's not allocated per trail.
It just goes into a general trail bucket to be used on summertime use improvements. Does that answer your question?
Follow-up question. I have a question on the, so if we go forward, we had trouble last year with all of a sudden the snowmobiles thinking they have the trail. And we had all kinds of issues with people on the trail, da. Okay, so what's going to happen today? So if we move forward, this passes or it doesn't pass, how do we communicate to the user groups that what we do today is not final? It has to go through the state, and we're already at whatever happened through the summer. We might not hear back in time. I don't know. But we have to be ahead of the curve on that because we were caught last time. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I understand. That responsibility would fall to me as the Parks and Trails coordinator. That's my job. Is reaching out and coordinating and communicating with these groups. Is it 100% foolproof that there's not going to be a snowmobile on the trail if this passes? It's tough. It's tough to enforce that, but that's my responsibility.
Supervisor Middleton, I think too, to talk about the confusion, our past administrator rejected, he actually issued a memo to allow them to do snowmobiles. So that's where the confusion came from. It wasn't through the plan. It was a directive, and then he pulled it back like the next day. So just wanted to clarify why it wasn't a parks person or a staff, it was an administrator. Supervisor Bonaprise.
Did you reaffirm the funding that Chris pulled out with the funding? How much a mile?
It's $300 a mile.
And who did that go?
The money comes from the DNR. It comes to the county and then goes. Yes. Then that goes to the club for reimbursements.
Supervisor Duncanson.
I just have a quick question. Are there any private landowners that permit the Stellar Trail to cross their property? Or this is all entirely state trail? Is there any cooperation needed from private landowners to change the use of this trail?
The short answer is no. Okay. It's state-owned trail, county managed.
Okay.
Supervisor Warndall.
I can share a little light on what happened to the trail system north of Cushing as a result of unhappy people. Those unhappy people were CAFO people that are on the farm side of CAFO. They got fed up and they said, we're shutting her down. So when you cross our farm and you're trying to go to Grantsburg, you hit 240th Street and you're done. Your choice is run on the blacktop, run on the dirt road, or turn around and go back. Same way if you go the other way, two different farmers shut that trail down. Now, I hear that the same thing's gonna happen here. There's a lot of landowners that are gonna be really upset about the snowmobiles been on there. And there are people that share their land now to let them on there. So if there's any major trails that run across private property that hook up to this trail, they may not exist after the school.
Mr. Chair. Reading through the report, there was a lot of discussion about the negative aspects of having equestrians and other users on the same trailway. And the presenter alluded to that, and we had some cogent comments from the public before we started our meeting or at the outset of our meeting. I'm familiar with the Gateway Trail in Minnesota where there's a parallel equestrian trail, and my friends who are equestrians said they didn't like riding on the same trail with other users. Notwithstanding all that, apparently the recommendation is not only that we go ahead and have equestrian, but we have it without any alteration of the trail itself. And I'm wondering how that is explained by the Environmental Services Committee as they reach their decision, or by the staff. And I have a big problem with that, I should mention.
Okay, well, that was not a question to Ben. So if there's any other questions to Ben, we can have them.
Oh, it was a question for Pat, if you can answer it.
Yeah, I don't accept the question. We can have that. Joe?
Yeah, the one thing I have to say is, it was brought up earlier in the meeting about everything being taking so much time and this and that. The snowmobile clubs have the extra money to do everything and are willing to do it. And all they're asking for is a chance. And to me, my feelings is this is for everybody. Everybody pays taxes. Everybody should use it because all your grant money comes from taxes.
Okay, hey,
so,
Joe.
Move on.
Joe, I would like you to say that when we get our motion and our second, we're going to vote on it. Right now, it was questions for Ben. I don't see any of the questions to Ben at this point. So thank you very much, Ben.
Mr. Chair, I would, this is Mike Pritchard again, and I think I did phrase it as a question, and I said, ask how they reconcile that information with the recommendation.
All right, thanks. So we have a discussion, presentation. Oh, I mean, yeah, if that was an answer, I don't understand the question.
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, we got Mike's got the questions.
The question was, the study came back with a lot of description about the downside of equestrians using the same trail as other users. But still the recommendation is coming through to do that, exactly that. And I'm wondering how that got reconciled. What's going to make us feel good about that?
Can you make them feel good? Yeah.
I don't know if I can do that, but I can certainly give you the justification that was provided with the Environmental Services Committee meeting. I can go through my stack of papers here. I'm just going to read right out of the resolution, if that's okay.
Yes.
Lines 30 through 38. Whereas the Environmental Services Committee reviewed the public input and trail use alternative options. After review, the ESC recommended that the Stour Seven Lakes State Master Plan include additional trail uses of snowmobiles and equestrian users as described in option SA3 and EA2 in the plan. These options were recommended as the best choice due to enhance economic development, provide consistent trail use options with other rail trails in the county to implement the original intent of this trail, and because of the high demand and interest of added user groups for increased trail use opportunities.
Thank you, Ben. Now we've got our questions. I would entertain a motion on resolution 2020.
So moved.
Okay, Joe Demling first. Supervisor Olson seconded it. Open for discussion or amendments. Supervisor Olson.
This is also what came out of the 2018 subcommittee. Was these two uses realistically? Today we're back to where we started in 2018 on this process. This is what the subcommittee voted out to recommend on the Stour Trail. a year and a half ago.
You know what, normally we do get a kind of a report from Environmental Services Chair, or I know you aren't talking well right now, Kim, but I guess one of the things I'd like to make sure is the public is aware of, you know, how thorough. There was some comments earlier with supervisors that are new, not probably realizing how thorough of a job staff and county dollars. Can someone explain to us, and then how thorough of a job do you think you guys have done with this process? Because someone said the TAG committee could do this, and I've watched this. There's no possibility the TAG committee could deal with this. So I'd like you to explain to them really how thorough of a process. Is this normal, or is this what we have done over the top?
I'm hesitant to say it's normal or it isn't. Being fairly fresh to the county, this was the first real project that I was involved in. I will say that the time that staff has spent and the hours that staff has spent have been a lot. There's a lot of time and effort into this project. We've tried to be as thorough as possible, but that's, you know.
Working on it for years.
The project's been ongoing for, well, this project since 2019.
Anyone else want to maybe say something for Supervisor O'Connell? Supervisor Olson, can you give us more of a environmental services report on this?
Well, I'll just say back to the subcommittee that was in 2018 that started this process. I believe we met 7 times, had the public hearing at the Unity High School where 55, I think it was said 55 people spoke. And we'll go back to that again. This is exactly what came out of that subcommittee at that time, spending 7-8 meetings with lots of public input on it. And at that time, and that's what the snowmobile, the representative of the snowmobile club, the Friends of the Star, I know at least voted for snowmobiles. I won't say horses because I can't remember, but it came out as a overwhelmingly to put horses on it, to even out of the subcommittee at that point.
Okay, so we do have a first and a second. We're in Supervisor Fitz, you have a question?
I would like to make a motion to amend the resolution to delete equestrian use from the resolution. And as I was saying previously, I don't read the report as supporting what the committee is recommending.
Supervisor, your motion. So Supervisor,
I'm sorry. What?
You make your motion. You need a second, and then you discuss it.
All right, that's fine.
So we're looking for a second to delete horses from the, I don't know exactly where it's at throughout. Where specifically are we deleting it?
Wherever it appears.
Huh?
Wherever it appears.
I take your motion, so when I take your motion, does anyone else have any for an amendment? Supervisor Dunn.
Yeah, I just add to what Steve was saying. I have already heard from landowners who currently permit snowmobiles to cross their property. And if snowmobiles are allowed on the Stour Trail, they're going to revoke that permission. So we may not be helping the snowmobile clubs as much as we think they are, and we may not be gaining the connectivity that we think we are if private landowners start cutting them off. And I understand they can still write and they don't like that, but they can still get from point A to point B doing that.
And we've heard this leverage comments on the cable things, so it's the same people everyone says they can do that and they want to do it. Is there any other questions or amendments, Supervisor Middleton?
Well, you know, I do get back to your favorite topic, okay? So I do feel like as this big picture, you know, so to back up, Stour really spurred us to kind of.
Hold on a minute.
Because we're at 3.5 hour time limit.
Yes, they didn't want to hear.
We have to adjourn, we have
There, now it's going.
Okay, Supervisor Middleton,
Okay.
back to your question
Well,
or your comments.
so I just still think that there is a role for this tag thing. I have been following Stour for many years, and I feel like we got to this point of needing the tag because Jack rightfully said, let's have sort of a come together, build trust, big picture, and I think because of our experience on the Stour and how divisive it's been and how much power grabs it's been on either side over the last 15 years, that we sort of got to the point where, okay, we're going to do a large countywide planning, we're going to figure this out, we're going to figure out what our connectivity issues are, what part of the pie we can increase, what part of the pie we need to connect, and for us to come out of the chute, I just can't get past the fact that we're going to come out of the chute in this trail planning plan by displacing users, whoever they are. And so for us to move forward, I think I really feel like we should put a pause on this. Just hold on for a second. It doesn't, none of the work goes away. Master plan stays the same. It's still on the books. And we just can adjust however it needs to be adjusted when we know what it really looks like.
Thank you. Appreciate your personal opinion.
Chair.
Hold on, Richard, or Joe, is that you? I don't know why I
Yes.
keep calling you Mike. Joe, what do you got?
That's not nice. The thing is, you know, we continue to say, let's let it go. Let it rest for a little while. We need to get this resolved now. We send it to the DNR. They're the ones that are going to make the decision. And as far as your snowmobile clubs and this and that, they, like I said before, they've got the money to keep these trails in condition. They got a monitoring patrol that turns people in, just like they do with the ATVs right now. I've been in close contact with a lot of the guys here, and they turn them into the sheriff's department. There's a patrol that goes and patrols all these trails, and give them a chance. If it's going to work, it's we do it. So let them go at it and see what happens. It can always be returned. Thank you.
All right, it seems, oh, Supervisor Wandall.
I'm sure the Environmental Services Committee, I know how hard they've worked, and I have no disrespect for what they've done. I've been involved in this for 4 months, so I mean, it's all new to me and several others here. So I'm sure you're wondering why a guy that lives north of 8, west of 87, and not only west of 87, but west of the River Road is concerned about a trail in Amory. So I want to clarify that by handing something out.
Okay, good.
So I'll go through my part, so.
I don't think he'll be on our side on anything else. His,
His son.
he's dating.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Supervisor Warndall. You got more? Okay.
Where's mine?
I'll mail it to you. These little girls here, they go to the Bernie Berkey, okay? They spend a lot of time on training on this trail here. So does their whole family, their mom, their dad, their grandpa's grandma. Grandpa and grandma still go this family alone. They use the trail. What are we gonna do with them?
So that was answered, Supervisor Warndall, during the meetings that you weren't here at, and I'm sure they can explain it to you.
I wish somebody would, because that's the part I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
if you had that question, I, as a chair, I can tell you that, and I'm not getting in the debate, but I sat and listened to how the trails, when you get a special permit, that they would close that trail down for an evening. There you go. So anyways, that wasn't the guy that told me
Get him
that.
out of there.
Yeah, so anyways, there's multiple, even for the Gandy, I mean, they reviewed all that through all these meetings over the last years. They addressed that specific issue, that those organizations that want to have an activity on the trail, you can petition. Ben, you can maybe fill in the process.
You know what? Wow.
That's, you know who that is.
Well, I'm not here to cause trouble.
I understand.
You know,
trying to get your
I
question
need to be
answered.
educated because I need to answer to my family.
Let's get
for
that
this.
education for you,
So-
that Ben or Bob can answer that for you. Because that's the problem with misinformation. There you get stuff like this going on.
Mr. Chair, what's the specific question?
The question is, if someone wants to have an event or an activity on a trail in Polk County, and they do it on the Gandy, they do it around the county, there's a process to hold their event. I remember that was thoroughly discussed more than once at Environmental Services. So Supervisor Warndall is concerned that there's an event on there, and he thinks, how can they do the event unless snowmobiles go by?
So, yes, there is are we good? Chad? Good? There is a special event permit that is issued by the DNR. That pertains to things, there's some stipulations to the event permit. One of them being a use that is otherwise not permitted on the trail. So if skiing is permitted on the trail as it stands, an event permit would not necessarily be the right avenue.
No, I'm talking more like what they used as an example was the Gandy allows, like, during the summertime, they allow the old cars go down it. So they get a special permit. They can go down the trail, right? Am I right, Kim? Can you explain a little bit? When they brought that issue up, and that's where they light these lanterns on the trail, right, Steve?
I'm just talking about what do we do with these kids that use this trail for everyday use?
Oh, I thought you were talking about a specific.
No, they go to Hayward to do the Berkey binder.
Oh, there was an event on the Stour Trail that I thought you were specifically talking about.
I'm just talking about what are we gonna do with these kids that are gonna be robbed the way this vote goes tonight, where you can't put them on that trail with snowmobiles?
Sure.
Is there an alternative? I mean, these kids need some, it's their hobby, it's their life.
Sure.
Where are we gonna put them? What are we gonna do for them?
Yeah, well, we've heard that for years and years and years. Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion, we've had a second, we've had our questions. I will actually call for a roll call vote. The motion was to adopt the resolution 2020 and to send it on to the DNR.
Can I call point of order? Can you call for a roll call vote as the chair?
Yeah, any member can call.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, Amy Middleton. Luke.
No.
Fran Duncanson? No. Russ Arkand?
No.
Sean Bonaprise? Is that a yes? I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Joe Demling?
Yes.
Brad Olson?
Yes.
Doug Rowdy?
Yes.
Steve Warnall?
No.
Tracy LeBlanc? Brian Masters? Michael Pritchard? He's not on there? Okay. Shane Kelly?
Yeah.
Carol Connell? Chris Nelson?
Yes.
I have 9 yeses. 5 noes. Must be 4 noes
What I
without.
was gonna ask, with Supervisor Pritchard, would it be a difference if you want to get him on the phone?
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so we're just gonna recap who we voted for what. I have, Olson, yes. Rowdy, yes. Warndall, no. Nelson, yes. LeBlanc, yes. Masters, yes. Kelly, yes. O'Connell, yes. Middleton, no. Luke, no. Duncanson, no. Arkand, no. Bonaprise, yes. Demling, yes. Is that? Okay.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Ordinance 2320, ordinance to enact and amend Polk County Chapter 18 subdivision ordinance. Bob, you going to talk to us briefly about that?
This is just a housekeeping item since a conversion to the division model. We need to amend the subdivision ordinance. Prior to this change, it was written in our ordinance that the director could sign off on subdivision reviews, CSMs, things of that nature. We have deleted or stricken the director because there is no director anymore. The land information director, that is, and replace it with either the surveyor or the zoning administrator. So just a housekeeping item. We do feel it'll create some efficiencies because we do have 2 people now that can sign off on those plat reviews. So that's the gist of it.
And this came out of Environmental Services with a unanimous vote. Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a second by the Supervisor Rowdy. All in favor, by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So we have discussion of possible action of proposed resolution ordinance on recommendations by General Government Committee. Resolution number 2120, donation from CJCC organization for courtroom technology upgrades. I know the Judge Anderson gave us an update at our meeting. General Government would be Supervisor Arkand. Give us an update on this, or Chad or whoever else. I don't know if we want to. This came out of General Government, correct? Yeah. Oh.
In order to bring the court technology up to par with their dated systems and get the courts back online due to COVID, It's about a $23,000 expenditure. The 501c3 CJCC, which is now dissolute, had some money remaining. So they're giving $9,000 in this resolution. If amended, they'll give up to $10,000 if an amendment is passed to offset that cost for the courts. But this resolution is written at $9,000. I was informed by the judge that if an amendment's offered by the board, that they can fund up to $10,000.
Do we have a Supervisor Masters?
Yeah, I'd like to make that amendment, just change the 9,000 to 10,000.
We do have a motion in a second. You want to just amend your original motion?
Yeah, I'll just amend my original motion.
Second, okay with that amendment?
Doug?
Yeah.
Yep.
All in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
So at this point now, they amended his original motion. So we have number 18. Vince, we want to give us an update on. Do we need to go into closed session?
Yes, Joe Burke is here with Varesco talking about some of his things at Varesco, and we need to go into closed session. So we need a motion for that.
Yes, do I have a motion going to closed session? Second by Arcan, first by Bonneprice, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're back into open session. We have a resolution. 2420. Do we have a motion?
Motion to,
Fran?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2420 to amend the delinquent property tax payment schedule for Turtle Holdings LLC.
We have a second. Second by Supervisor Masters. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Okay. Supervisor announced, no, before supervisor announcements, this is where I am making a appointment. Okay, so first I actually have to ask for Supervisor Masters to be brief and resign, please. It's 10:07, Masters. You gotta send you out with the bang, man.
Well, I'll be brief and I'll make some other comments to supervisor's comments. But yes, I sent a letter to Chairman Nelson back on June 29th, indicating my resignation was aforementioned, as I'm going to be moving out of the county. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Masters, and I did get that notice from Supervisor Masters, and we talked about it, and we felt that for the constituencies and the people of the public, that he would, once he put his house up for sale and was moving, that he would resign and let someone else take his spot. So again, I won't bore you with the whole thing on how well I thought I did vetting, but I believe I have a very, very strong candidate. I was proud of him as far as vetting him as Sharon. And his name is Dan Rook. He is lives in Balsam Lake Township. He currently sits on the Economic Development Corporation for Polk County. He works for John Deere. He's got a lot of experience running organizations and big budgets, and I think he's a very, very straight down the middle of the road professional person. And I would like to make him supervisor from district, which one is it? 6. I'd like to get a motion to approve that. Tracy, second by Steve. Any discussion? Supervisor Middleton.
How about that?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, Dan, I'm very, glad to hear you like him, and it's straight down the, whatever you said, but I have some concern around this process. I feel like we need it to be a little more open. It's not even that it needs to be more inclusive, because we have a candidate who just finished an election, who ran and finished second, got, I don't know, something over 300 people voted for him. And it's a little unsettling that we don't sort of follow this common sense practice of appointing the runner-up candidate. And so I don't really like that we stepped out of that sort of democratic process of election and we're putting in someone else outside of that. But at the very least, I feel like we should appoint, like, have a spin runoff and then have whatever election that runs in the spring. I don't think us 15 in this room should make a decision for 80% of the remaining term. If it was later in the term, it might not be so different, but there's a lot of the term left, and we would be making that decision. So I'm not really comfortable with us putting in new person to go with the runner-up person.
Thank you. Supervisor Bonifaz.
I'd like to say that I've been in on this.
Mike.
Not because it's late, I forgot it. This has always been the process for the chair, and I asked Willie a question, and the chair has always reached out to a local municipal or towns and asked what their recommendation would be for names, and I believe you did that. You came to the executive committee, which you sure didn't have to explain the qualifications of the people like you did, and our executive committee voted unanimous for this. And you can say the same thing. Well, through certain number of people voted for the candidate, a certain number of people voted against the candidate, and you know the process has worked very well. I think I've seen at least 10 people in my time that was appointed in the same manner. I think you did a fantastic job, and I think it's a great process.
Any other questions? Fran?
Sure. I was just wondering, did you speak to the town, any township officials? Okay.
Yeah, so I reached out to town officials and I reached out to citizens in the community. And like I said, you know, which was very interesting about this one was that the other supervisor that did run against him sent me a letter asking me to, and Middleton, Supervisor Middleton, this is more directed to your question. He had specifically asked me to nominate him. And then when I didn't, that's when he contacted the newspaper and asked for a runoff. So this is the one where I thought, you know, for a county board chair, not realizing, you know, this is a responsibility you have. You certainly can't pick someone just because they ran for an office and they didn't get elected. You know, I reached out to the community and clearly the community that supported Supervisor Masters, I'm assuming they were the ones that supported the names, and they were all on the list. I probably had 7 individuals on the list. I vetted them, and I had to make that decision. I took it to the executive committee, which I didn't have to do. And like I said, we will put it on the executive committee's agenda to look at this. And yeah, it's just the last chair that sat in this, I sat through 2 appointments, Supervisor LeBlanc and Supervisor Isaacson. And we have Supervisor Demling. They have all been appointed supervisors to the board. So this has been done. It just obviously someone right now doesn't like this specific one and has rattled the cages, so that's how I'll leave it. So I think we should call a question and vote on it.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I want to make one other observation was tonight was the first time I had heard this name, and I think in the just in the process that getting the word around, probably everyone else had heard and I had not, but anyway, I kind of feel uncomfortable coming into a meeting and suddenly there's a name and vote on someone to be here. And I have never met Mr. Muck, and I have absolutely no background whatsoever, but so be it. I just want to make that comment.
I understand. There's been a.
I believe the name was mentioned at the executive committee, if you follow.
It was. Yeah, the name was brought up through the executive committee. That was a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago. So the name was brought up at a committee meeting in public. All right, so yeah, and if people aren't comfortable with it, don't vote for them. That's not a problem. But I do call for the vote, and all in favor, please by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Supervisor Middleton voted against.
I abstain.
What do we got? You're right. Actually, you don't even get to talk here, Supervisor's comment. Don't start crying. But it does say in grateful appreciation, Polk County Board of Supervisors presents Brian Masters with this award in recognition for his 10 years of dedicated service. And we can all go back to our normal seating assignments again.
There's just a few things I'd like to say just before I pass it. This is where I feel comfortable.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Supervisor, no, I just wanted to, yeah, it's on. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank my wife after a lot of consideration and discussion. This just kind of happened real suddenly. It was never my intention to honestly leave until my term was over. You know, it's I've been on this board for over 10 years now, and I've had many accomplishments over my tenure, and I feel very proud of those. I will miss being on this board very much. I've met a lot of great people, the staff, everyone that's on this board has been really, really great to work with. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't going to discuss this in my final speech, but I just feel a few things need to be said regarding that damn article from the county leader about cronyism concerns on the county board. And Mr. Marsden, that was approved by Gary King. I must have snuck that in. I heard Mr. Marsden apologize. I didn't take that for much of an apology. You know, he's got some issues with that process. Fine. But when you sit there and two people go on about me being appointed by the county board, you know, I'm sorry, someone else being appointed by the county board, and I was being called cronyism. There was two individuals that thought something was wrong. Something was up. Why, I don't know. I think not. Mr. Miles believes this, he was runner-up that, what exciting that there were pretty obvious reasons. He was runner-up, quote unquote, said there were pretty obvious reasons, quote unquote, for him believing that he should be appointed. I don't know Mr. Miles from nothing. I met him one time. We sat there at a rally back here before the election, and we stood there, and he hardly said a thing. joked around about having to go to a cello concert. Okay. I don't have anything against him, but, you know, again, he questions my ethics in the article, saying I knew what was going on. I did this, I did that. Well, Mr. Miles is a news aggregator. He even quotes me in his letter he sent to all of you. You know, I don't believe that kind of person needs to be on this kind of board that wants to cause trouble and cause all this ruckus. It's just, that's not what this board's about. It's about working together for the common good of the people of Polk County. The county's had this process forever, like Chairman Nelson said. They've been board appointments for years and years. I've been, you know, part of this board for 12 years. I was off for a couple of years. And this was always the process that was followed. Whether you want to change the process or not, it wasn't changing. When to our 2020 rules of order, when we brought it up. Again, not knowing that Jim was going to die and I'm, you know, end up having to leave. You know, those are, huh? It's just, you know, those are things that happen in life, you know, life goes on. And I beat Mr. Miles by a 65 to 35 margin. The people voted for me. End of story. Yeah, we take vacations to Florida once in a while. John does it. He goes to Arizona. I've been to Florida a couple of times myself, you know, during the winter. People do that. I come back and I've done my work for the people for over 10 years now. Okay, enough of that. Thank you again. I want to just go over a few things about my career here. I was a member of the Finance Committee from pretty much day one when I got on the board in 2008, which gave me great experience being able to review all the budgets of all the departments that we have in Polk County. At the time in 2008 when I got elected, our finances were floundering. We didn't have a very good finance director. We didn't have an administrator at the time. In 2009, finally, we made a resolution to hire a county administrator, Dana Fry. Jim Fry was a great man. He would be the man. Dana was my mentor for many years. I went over everything with him all the time. I met with him once, 2, 3, 4 times a month, every week almost, discuss budgets and issues of what needed to be non-mandated versus mandated issues. These were things that needed to be discussed and addressed to give Polk County the financial stability it needed. And he was the man that turned this all around. Thanks with the great help of Maggie Wickery, who's also since retired. Great gal, she knew her stuff. In 2017, we put an island shop together. That was being pretty much was a lot of people didn't want it at the time. Well, finances got turned around. We had a government bank come in and give us a bank loan instead of bonding. Great. What a way to do that financially. That was the best decision we had. And we had a largest loan, and that helped our financial health immensely. County also was able to pay off some bonds with the higher interest rates with that loan from the bank, which is also an awesome thing to do. That's what you need to do today and in the future. Planning financially for the future, not just today, but the future. And I always preface that because, you know, people look back at the past, well, this is what we did in the past, but we need to see the financial now and in the future. And that's why we've got this 3-year plan that we've had in our finances for a number of years now, thanks to Dana Fry and his staff. Again, I want to say that Polk County has a great leadership team now with our division leadership going on. And the administrator, Mr. Netherland, he won't be my mentor, but maybe I would have been yours for a few months. And the great staff that run this county, they should be commended for what they do. They've done a great job in helping this county stay stable through all the thick and thin, the COVID business, and all this wonderful crap that has to happen in our world, unfortunately. It's too bad the media can't try to be nicer to people. That's all I gotta say. It's been a pleasure working with all my constituents, my peers on the county board, and the great staff again. I wish you all well in your future endeavors and doing the right thing for this county. Again, we all live, work, and play in Polk County. That was my motto, and that's will always be my motto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thanks, Brian. It's been fun.
It has been.
Any other supervisor announcements, John?
Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, I have a conference call with Michael Polk, the executive director of the Madison County Association. I have a number of those on the time steering committees I'm on to go over with them. But if anybody has anything in particular that you want to see in Wisconsin County, have resolutions for, call. 10 o'clock tonight.
Anyone else announce? You have a motion to adjourn? Yes.
I got cut off just when you were taking a vote on the Stour Lake Trail, and so my vote was not recorded. I don't know if it makes any difference at this point in time, but maybe the minutes could reflect that I was unable to vote.
Thank you. We had a first and all in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.